All right. We'll go ahead and call to order the Estacada School Board of Directors meeting on October 20th, 2021. Let's go ahead and stand for the pledge.
Ready, begin.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Denise, can we get a roll call, please?
Director Walper,
Here.
Director Martinez,
Here.
Director Berman,
Here.
Director Johnston,
Here.
Director Wheeler,
Here.
Vice Chair Shibahara,
Here.
Chair Rydell.
Present.
We have a quorum.
All right, Denise, was this meeting properly notified?
Yes, it was.
Thank you very much. On to B, adoption of the agenda. Can I get a chair to adopt the agenda? Or not?
Chair Rydell, I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand.
Motion carries.
All right, Board of Directors reports, and we're going to start at this end with Director Walper.
I have nothing.
Okay, thank you, sir. Director Berman.
I'll keep it short too. Looks like we have a lot to listen to tonight. I know there were some vendor selection interviews on the seismic project, so I'm looking forward to hearing about that because I couldn't make it. So thanks for making it. Football team's doing great. Soccer team's doing great. Looks like everybody's staying healthy, so let's keep it up. That's all I've got.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Director Wheeler.
Not much to add. Made it to a couple home football games. It's good to see the community gathering around that. To echo Director Berman about the soccer team, it's good to hear that they're doing well. I haven't heard much about volleyball, but hopefully maybe we hear that today. And, or maybe not. And then on the youth football front, we are, it seems like 21 or 22 weeks into this football season so far. We got 2 weeks left and about 4 practices, and it's seems like it's about that time. It's been a good season though. A lot of kids are out, and we're having fun and beating big schools too, except for Westland last weekend. So.
Perfect, thank you. Vice Chair Shibahara.
Thank you. Just a quick update. We had the Pillar Communications Engagement Pillar meeting, and that was really interesting to get some early numbers on our survey results. So I love to, dig into that more. But I'm hopeful that the participation rate went up as we were working towards. And so there's a lot going on with video series that sound really interesting. And I think that I'm looking forward to seeing the tour series around the buildings and facilities that we're going to share with our community. Super excited about that. I also wanted to also just personally give an update about the communications, the positive communications. I received a call today from one of my children's teachers praising their work and participation and engagement in class. So that was nice to get, it's very encouraging. So, soccer, sports, yes, exciting, but we seem to be having a reffing issues, lack of refs. So maybe career future for some folks, but that seems to be one of the limiting factors in a lot of our games and things. So. That's it.
Thank you. Director Martinez.
No reports.
No? Okay, thank you. Director Johnston.
I was able to sit in the inclusive practices pillar meeting. It was a great meeting, talked about next 30 days and all the good work that's happening, and so excited for any updates from that group, and excited for you guys to hear some of the good stuff that's happening through that. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And I'll try not to repeat high school music concert last week. So for any that attended, Mr. Frunk did say, I think it was 10 rehearsals or 8 rehearsals that they've had before their first concert, and frankly did a great job. So it was great to see the kids able to perform, and it was nice to see fans in the stands. So that was a great event. Middle school basketball is starting up here pretty quick, so that's, again, good to see more and more activities. Obviously, youth football came from practice, hence the outfit. And then, High School Musical this year is going to be Grease, so rehearsals have started for that. And so a lot of involvement from both the high school and the middle school, which is always great to see when we can pull those younger kids up to perform with the high schoolers. So a lot of great stuff coming, and just very excited about where we're headed. So that's it for me. All right. So we're going to go into item D, strategic plan pillar reports, and it looks like Mr. Scott Sullivan is up first with student success.
Tough to see with this stuff, so I'm going to, if it's okay, just temporarily pull that down so I can use my glasses, and I'm going to keep with the theme and be very brief today. Welcome back. I hope you had a chance to listen to a fantastic YouTube presentation a couple of days ago, or maybe that was yesterday. That was our annual summary of everything. What I'm going to share with you is just what we started to do this year in the last month and a half with student success. Again, our goal is to have 85% of our students meet that's 100% of the essential learning standards that they are assigned by their teachers. We do not have a current goal for PLCs, but we do have recent data coming in, and we will be creating a goal by the end of November, I believe, and we'll start adding that to our presentation. So the goal hasn't changed. Last year, we did make a few adjustments, or quite a few adjustments in our group, and the strategic actions are pretty much very similar, that I will try to provide leadership in instructional, in accessing data and all necessary resources and PD to increase student learning and student goal setting. One of the things, I'll talk a little bit more about it, and that's with our leading indicators dashboard that Mike Ware and Bryce Babikoff helped put together. Over the summer, we did some research, and based on that research, we identified 3 leading indicators that the data shows impacts the effectiveness or the success of students in college and career. And those 3 things are generally student attendance, student completion of work, and student grades. And according to the research, if students have 80% of each one of those categories or better, if they're performing at 80% or better, they have a higher rate of success in college and career. So we set that as a new short-term goal so that we could collect data more frequently and have it more up to date so that we can make quicker changes than we were doing last year with our old Essential Learning Standards dashboard, which was more of an autopsy of the work that we were doing. So we are now meeting every 2 weeks, and we're running a report that'll show us every student who's 79% or below in attendance and work completion and meeting proficiency in essential learning standards. I think we mentioned that last week. We've had a couple of meetings. They're going real well. We're starting to have these concrete discussions about students and groups of students and what we're doing differently day to day, week to week to help them reach the 80% and above for every indicator. So that's a big piece of work that we're doing. Did want to share a little something with you. This is some recent work of just the last month, but I put this together, I think, a week and a half ago. So this data is about a week and a half, 2 weeks old. But at that time, I had done 22 separate rounding sessions to help collect information, gather voice of our leaders and the key players in our teaching and learning, and start to help make some of those adjustments. In addition to that, I've been able to write 60 thank you cards, and I only bring that up not to say that I'm doing a lot of writing, but I want you to know that we got a lot of people doing the right thing in our district. Those thank you cards are there to represent what is right. And so when we see or hear about students or teachers or staff members doing the right thing, we're trying to recognize that so that we can get it replicated as often as possible. Our pillar committee meeting, we did have one. It was fairly brief because, again, it was a review of just a very short period of data. And at that point in time, we did not have any new recommendations for the next 30 days. And so with that, our pillar is done sharing for the week. Any questions?
I do have a question. Back on the slide with the, the line graph on it. So essential work completed. So is this year, school year to date,
This,
the red line, or I guess all the
Is-
data?
you'll see what that is that comes in there, and that is colorblind. So yes, it looks like it's about the same color. So that would be work completion to date, and those would be students that are on the list, meaning they're below 80%.
Gotcha.
And you'll see early on, we didn't have a lot of data. Then when we started to put more data into Power School, you saw a bit of a kick up, but now you're starting to see it go down as we are monitoring and providing those interventions.
I believe the red lines also represent grade level. And so as I look at that graph, it
Yes.
looks like 10th graders are
Thank you.
at the most at risk at the moment.
They're the most at risk, or they're completing the most work?
They're completing the least amount of work.
Okay.
Thank you for that correction.
And the numbers on the left-hand column represent the number of kids.
Perfect. That cleared it up. I was going to ask a follow-up later, just not to hold everybody up my inability to understand them.
It's a legitimate question.
Thank
Good
you.
question. I need to
Okay.
be able to see that. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Next up, strong inclusive culture, collaborative culture with Jason and Kelly.
Good evening, everybody. Good to be back. I'll present for a little bit, and then Kelly will come up and share her. I want to give a little update on our progress with regards to student engagement. These were the goals that we had set last year. We're going to dive a little deeper. So on the student engagement, so as a reminder, this is just the our annual twice a year surveys that our students are completing. And so I wanted to give a quick update from where our history. So in spring of 20, this again is on our 5-point scale. We were at 3.76. So this is listening to our student voice. Fall of 20, we were at 3.76. And remember, our goal is at 3.98. Spring of last year, we got a pulse check at 4.02, and so we were above our goal. And then we just recently received our results fall to fall, and it came in at a 3.84. We didn't meet our goal, but we also showed great growth over the year, which is great. And it gives us an opportunity to engage with our students, hear what they're saying about their school experience, and then working together to dig into that, and always striving for that, what is a five? So that's where we're at with our student engagement. And again, this is our student voice, K-12. At the elementary level, we had a goal that our students who are served by special education would be experienced in their school day in the least restrictive environment. And so last year, fall of 20, we're at 86% of students at the elementary level were in that 80% or more gen ed setting. Spring, we had moved up to 89%. And just recently, we ran the report, and 95% of our students at the elementary level are experiencing school in the least restrictive environment. And that is a huge, phenomenal success. And so that is great, and that work doesn't happen by accident, and that's just all of us working together. We also know that we needed to be better about monitoring real time. So that's those percentages is a larger sample size or time period, so we needed to be finer in that. And so you do have a link on that where you can see where our learning specialists are reporting weekly and recording where students are spending their time on a day-to-day basis. So you'll have an opportunity to dig into that. Have a link there. And it also is just monitoring the trends that we're seeing. At the secondary level, we had a goal last year to improve and increase participation from specified subgroups at the secondary level to participate in co-curricular activities. And so those subgroups that we are working with are students supported by special education, students with 504 plans, and students that are emerging bilingual. We then took co-curricular activities that are shared between the middle school and the high school. So the overall population, this is very interesting, the overall population of our students, 56% participate in some type of co-curricular activity that are shared between the middle school and the high school. In fall of 20. The subgroups, those identified subgroups, are participating at about 8% of those students are participating. The data that we just crunched this year, in part, and thanks with the vice principals at the secondary level doing this, we've seen a dip in the overall participation rate of our students to 45%. And subsequently, we've also seen a dip in our participation of those identified subgroups. And you do have a link to that data, and so you can look in there and crunch that data. This is a little snapshot of the level and depth that they're working in, of crunching that data on who the students are that are participating. Those are the successes and the data that we've been digging into, working with our inclusive practices and our student engagement. We also have the middle school data there as well. Questions before I turn it over?
I've got one, if I may. I'm
Yeah.
still learning. How do you collect this information to acquire these percentages?
With regards to the co-curricular activities?
Any of them that you just came up with? What's the process?
Yeah. So on the co-curricular activities, we went back and we looked at all of the rosters of the students that were participating in sport, an activity of sport, say football. We also looked at choir, band, those different types of activities, looked at who the students were and if they were identified in some of these identified subgroups. So that's one way that we came up with those percentages relative to the overall population.
Okay, thank you.
So one question, when we look at fall of 2020, there wasn't a whole lot of actual activities happening in fall of 2020. So did we use the data from spring of 2021 and just assign it back to who signed up for the activities that would have happened in the fall, or how did we do that?
We did a little bit of, it was a little bit tricky. We did a little look back to what the previous year, so that was the last kind of typical year.
Okay,
And then when we did do activities, we added those in as we towards the end of last year when we had our kind of interesting sports seasons and different activities going on.
okay.
It's been a little bit, it's been challenging to collect all of that data in our current setting. That is an apples to apples comparison, but I feel really good about where we're at.
And without, I know we've got the links and I haven't had a chance to dig into it, looking forward to. Do we see that more at the middle school level or the high school level that we're seeing a decrease, or is it pretty consistent?
It was pretty consistent across the board. I think probably that it's a little bit weighted on the high school side because there are more activities and more participation just overall.
And then the last question with that, I think we've talked about it before, but because so many of the activities at the middle school level aren't driven by the school, so when you look at athletics, the vast majority of that is community driven. So have we collected that data as well?
Not on the community side. So we did identify the shared activities that do happen that are school sponsored.
Okay. Okay, because that's just it's a pretty small number for the middle school when you look at athletics in particular.
It is, yeah. And
you've
the purpose of that data, though, is to make sure that the teams are well represented with all demographics of students who are at the middle school and the high school. And so the baseline data of who's involved helps us best determine, does each program mirror the student body of the school?
Sure. There's just few of the athletic programs actually run
True.
through the school, right? It's track and
Yeah.
wrestling and basketball,
Volleyball,
volleyball.
cross country.
Okay,
The most
so there's more than that.
participation, especially at the middle school, is in the others that aren't sports, so like band, choir,
Right.
drama, some of those.
Okay.
You get a bigger population size, so.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate that.
Jason, I have a question on the big chart you have with the green, yellow, red, and blue.
One?
Yes.
Yeah. This
So-
is- Yeah.
Looking in the green column, number of participants, take somebody that lives in Rochelle's house, maybe plays soccer and does band or choir, I don't know for fact, but, so they're a girl, or a boy soccer, so they're one of the 32.
Yep.
Are they also a choir, but then you go down there and you got 284, and then you're going against 510? So I'm just wondering are they being double counted?
Probably. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So that number's actually less then, because you have somebody that's super involved versus that 512. So they're showing up as somebody else on that list, if you're following me, in my weird way of thinking.
Correct.
Probably. Yeah, it could, yes. I'm going to say yes. That's a great question that we can dig in with our folks to say, how can we refine our data collection to make sure that we're getting exact representation of who we are.
Yeah, because the only thing I would think is that as you get through the year and you go through fall sports, spring sports, winter, all that, and it's 55% of the overall population, but it's really probably a heavy 20% that's doing everything throughout the year, and then a lot of kids that aren't involved at all. So those I would think, be the kids we want to target with some information of this nature, right?
And make your goals more achievable, too.
Right. Well, and so this is the very data we're trying to collect specifically for baseline purposes, so we can address that very problem. Because it does exist, that problem exists.
Well, I've got one that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them,
Yep.
right? So they're counted 5 times. So that's 4 more people in the baseline that you're working against to get the participation rate. So I think it would be important to refine that.
Yeah, this has been a tricky data crunching endeavor. It really has. And I appreciate the feedback, and I'm open to getting some more feedback on how we can refine that to getting a true representation of who the students are and where they're at. And I mean, I think we have a great baseline and a great start, and we also need to refine it a little bit.
I have a quick question too, well, not
Yeah.
quick, but when we look at what our goal is of participation, feels like we've picked very traditional activities to set as our target and our baseline. Is there consideration of expanding our offerings to both those middle school and high school students that would allow more participation? I guess I'm just,
I think that's a great question. I would also, as we get deeper into this discussion, I would also like to look at who are the students that are in, say, some of our advanced placement classes, who are participating in our CTE programs, and start digging into some of those pieces, as well as, hey, we also need to expand some clubs or opportunities for
Right.
students that aren't participating in anything. Because we
Exactly.
know that there's more to school other than just 8 to 3 in academics.
yeah, okay, so that's where we're heading with, as starting this baseline.
So this is the first time we've ever collected such information. And as we ask ourselves who is not accessing these opportunities, this data is here to serve us as we begin to investigate the why behind that. And so I'm pleased. I mean, I'm not overall pleased with the numbers, but the fact that we have numbers in the first place is the right spot to start. So now we can continue to investigate those.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm gonna,
You thought you were done.
are you measuring the same categories, high school and middle school? I know these are both snapshots.
Yeah, so that's also one, our field of shared opportunity is pretty small. because of-
Meaning, like, it looks like in the middle school, we measure economic disadvantaged. Are you doing that in the high school too?
We have that data, but for this baseline purposes, we chose students with IEPs, students supported by 504, and emerging bilingual. But we could expand to the other subgroups as well. Yep.
I was thinking about Ben's question, and maybe we could do a decimal system. Like Ken's got a student that's in 4, so 0.25 for each one of them
Yeah.
would give you 1.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's some weighted things. I need a statistician to come in and help me crunch those numbers, if anybody knows one.
I think we have one over there.
There we go. Because I think you're right, we need to add, you could do it that way, add some weights and different things, so.
Well, and it's good data to know who's doing multiple things too. And
Yeah.
it's good to keep track of that because we encourage multiple activities.
Anything else for Jason?
Yeah, I want to go back to Joe's question on the economic disadvantage. It says there's 404 total kids at the Escada Middle School. 369 of those are economically disadvantaged.
To be honest, I haven't dug into that piece of it because it wasn't part of our thing, so.
Okay.
That
It's
seems
a
a
good
bit
question.
high,
Hold on to
but-
that question.
Seems a bit high, but not that much higher.
So there's 40 families that are not economically disadvantaged in the Escada Middle School.
I will need to get back to you on that.
It's an uphill battle if that's the case.
It's always been an uphill battle in this school district.
Wow. Okay.
I think you're
All
safe.
right, thank you, everybody, I appreciate it.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Excited to give you an update on our employee engagement and district services survey here. First, just want to say that these achievements would not be possible without the amazing staff that we've had in every department. We've been focusing on a best place to work environment throughout our organization, and these scores reflect that hard work. Thank you to each and every person who has contributed. Throughout this time, we focused on strategic action plans to improve communication and collaboration in employee engagement and in district services. From providing additional time at meetings to collaborate in the teaching and learning department, to transportation, implementing a system to announce their arrival and departure time for buses to implement COVID protocols, to adding a rotating position on the leadership team at Rivermill Elementary. We're seeing the strategic actions working, and we're excited to finally have the scores to show you that it is. So our fall score for October 2021 in the employee engagement is a 4.22, which you can see, so we exceeded our goal, which was a 4.12. And I'm gonna go a little quick, I know I'm a little short on time. In our district services, we had a 4.51, and our goal was a 4.26. So some wins in employee engagement that we want to share by the numbers. We had 280 responses in our employee engagement survey. We appreciate getting feedback from everyone who participated, and we've had over 2,000 thank you cards sent from every department. This always action of gratitude is being seen in every department, and as Scott mentioned, we don't share this to brag about how many thank you cards we've sent. We brag about because how many actions we're seeing that are right and recognizing what right looks like. We had 126 employees put in a comment inserting a shout out to other staff members, and 127 comments on things that are working well, 109 on things that what could be improved. The numbers are exciting as we do really want to collect and act on our employee feedback. This year is the IT dashboard. They've implemented and are utilizing a new communication protocol system to respond to requests quickly and accurately. The data showing response time is the time between the time when the ticket is submitted and when the tech team initially responds to the ticket by assigning an IT team member or an IT wizard to that ticket. The resolution time is when the ticket is submitted to fully closed by the IT team member. And as you can see, so from July 1st to October 6th, 1,053 tickets, which is huge. So a huge shout out to Chrissy, Bryce, Graham, and Brandon for that hard work. Yesterday, we had our 90-day rollout, and it was successful. It's now time for our department and building leaders to get to work with the team to focus on creating the next strategic action plans for the 90-day cycle that will start in December. So that'll mean, as the slide shows, the intentional data collection, so focusing on asking our leaders for evidence and rounding, a renewed commitment to our rounding schedules. Our leaders will get together with teams to start their 90-day rollout, and we talked about in our pillar committee meeting, inviting parents and community to join us to our pillar committee. It's the second Monday of the month on Zoom. Questions and employee engagement or district services? I know that was quick.
Just on the wins, 280 responses equals what percentage?
So we believe that's over 100% because some people took it twice,
Okay.
Which would make sense because we have a few people who have more than one supervisor. So if you're a specialist who works, let's say, at the middle school and the high school, you would probably take that survey to report on your middle school principal and your high school principal. So we're about 257 employees right now, so probably a few extras.
Thought I was asking the right person.
I do want to just highlight too, when you look at the wins and the growth, if you go back to the slide with the October results, one more back, there you go. In the Studer model and the model that we're using as far as the improvement science, right? Once you get above a 4 rating, which is out of 5, meaningful movement is 5 basis points, right? That means you're doing a great job in creating impressive change within the group if you get a 5 basis point increase in your score. If you're below that, from 3.5 to 4, it's 10 basis points, and I
Right.
think below 3.5 is 15 basis points or
Yep.
20 basis points. But when you can already be at a 4.21, right? That's where we were, because our goal was to raise by 5 basis points to get to 4.26. So to go from 4.21 to 4.51 is off the charts improvement. And so I didn't want that to slide by on both of those. When you go from a 4.07 to a 4.22 in employee engagement, and again, a 30-point increase in district services. So kudos to the entire team, because you are absolutely right. That doesn't happen on its own. It's an
Thank you.
incredible amount of work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
All right, next up, Ms. Maggie Kelly with Engaged Family and Communities.
Board of Directors. So I'm excited to share new data as well. This is very hot off the presses. We closed our parent engagement survey this last Friday. And while those numbers are not officially finalized yet, we might have a little bit of flux still. We're pretty confident on the numbers that we're presenting today. And I'm excited to present them. So as a refresher, our fall score last year was a 3.78. So our goal was to increase by 0.1, which would have put us at a 3.88. We are clocking in at a 3.99 right now, so a growth of 0.21, more than double our growth goal. So that's really exciting to see. I'll share a little bit more later, but our participation increased as well, which is really exciting to see that we heard from a broader variety of the community as well. So really exciting. And the past year, what a challenging time to actually increase parents' engagement and perception of our schools. So we're really proud of that. And that also did not happen on its own. It was a tremendous effort from our staff and our buildings. So some of the wins, our survey participation overall increased by about 31%. We were in the fall of last year at about 570 responses. We increased that to 730 responses, which is really exciting. Around 70% of our Spanish-speaking families took the survey this year. That was an area that we saw was really low in the fall of last year. So Leticia Gonzalez and our buildings made a concentrated effort, calling families, reaching out to them, sending letters home. And so that's exciting. We had over 50 families that completed it. And then just hearing from people overall, it's just fantastic to see. We're really proud of that. The buildings did a really concerted effort, communicating the why we want to hear from you, putting it on social media. We also experienced a great deal of success with Parent Square. Every time we sent out a Parent Square text link, we received over 100 responses just from that one Parent Square message. So Parent Square continues to be a really successful tool that we can utilize. Our scores also increased pretty substantially from the fall of 2020, and that increase was seen at every single building, so really exciting that every building saw growth. And we had a lot of parent themes around communication that we can continue to improve on, increasing classroom communication, and our COVID-19 response. So those are some of the areas that we can continue to work on. Another barrier was that even though we did see growth in our 2 lowest scoring areas, which are positive communications and knowing how my child is doing academically, those are still our 2 lowest scoring items. So every building did see growth in those items, and some of them saw pretty substantial growth. But we still need to continue to focus on them, see if we need to just continue doing what we were doing, because clearly it did lead to score increases, or if there's some higher leverage items that we could change up our action plans to address. So some things that are going on currently are buildings are maintaining contact logs and rounding logs for staff to track their outreach. That's been successful. I'm always happy to hear about stories like Vice Chair Shibahara shared when she's getting those phone calls. It's always great to hear. Another thing is our business department launching their finance video series, and our operations video series continues to be successful as well. We were excited to film a tour of Estacada High School that is dropping soon. And then we are going to start putting survey pulse checks into those video series as well, because one thing that we always struggle with is getting leading data instead of lagging data, and we want to continue to see if those communications are effective so that we can continue to adjust them. Results rollouts will be coming out over the coming days. It takes about a month to finalize the score results, but we feel pretty confident in knowing where the growth and lagging areas were in the parent survey. So we're moving ahead with doing rollouts to staff, and then we'd like to do some rollouts to parents as well. So we're still talking over what we want those parent rollouts to look like, because we really want to engage the whole community, especially when we have those 2 stubborn low-scoring items. We really want to dig into those and see what we can do to continue to improve those items. So I'm excited to see those rollouts, and then those will directly translate into our action plans moving forward. Moving on to our November communications report. It is still a busy time. We have hosted our first Spanish-speaking parent night. We have a second event tomorrow. We're really excited about that. We've done a lot of outreach. Well, Leticia has done a lot of outreach to our secondary level families to hopefully get some increased Estacada Middle School and Estacada High School participation at those meetings. She's rounded with almost 50 families since the beginning of the year, so she's really been trying to make those individual connections, which is fantastic. As I mentioned before, we are launching a lot of new video series. And the Day in the Life video series, Josh Gray did a fantastic job with that. That was created in response to employee voice. We had some employees that said that they want the community to be aware of the job they do in the community, especially as they were frontline employees during the pandemic. And also, 2 birds with 1 stone. We know that hiring and recruiting and retaining employees at this time continues to be something that needs to be a focus. So showing this day in the life where we have a great employee ambassador talking about the work they do and why it's meaningful, we can use that for recruiting, also retaining our current employees, showing that we really value the work that they do. So we're excited to continue that. We started with nutrition services. I believe we're doing maintenance next, so I'm really excited about that. Over the past month, our district was featured in 3 TV news stories. 2 in particular, we got to celebrate a tech grant that the technology department did a fantastic job of securing for the district, more than $400,000. Always exciting to see us being recognized on TV news for something so positive. We recently did a community polling where we surveyed more than 400 community members, and about 35% of them said that the main source of district news is local TV channels. That was by and far the largest item. I think the next largest item was 12%, and that was talking to friends and neighbors. So people are really turning to their local TV news, so that's why we continue to focus on getting our story told in the TV news. It's not for vanity's sake, it's just we know a lot of great things are going on in Estacada. Another exciting celebration that occurred was our Top Workplaces Award. That is our 2nd time in 2 years. We're the first district in Oregon ever to be recognized twice, and we were the only public school district to get recognized as a top workplace this year. As Kelly Hayes shared, we do a pretty intentional job of engaging our employees, so it's exciting to go out for that award, and I know it helps us recruit talented employees, especially, again, during a time when it is more important than ever to have a competitive edge on recruiting new employees. So always excited to amplify that. And then we're currently working with Human Resources in filling positions. We sent out some postcards. We've done some social media campaigning as well. We've had around 10 responses so far. We're hoping that we get them into filled positions. We've just had people reach out and say they're interested, wanting to learn more. We've given them applications, started walking them through the process. So we're hoping that we'll see that intense recruiting efforts pay off. And then projects in process right now. We are transitioning our All In for Estacada Schools podcast to a Facebook Live distribution that will be coming up in the coming weeks. We're hoping to potentially leverage that to do our parent rollout out there. We just really want to see more opportunities for 2-way feedback, and we think that our Facebook Live series gets in front of more eyes. We continue to look at the data and use that to inform our decisions, and the data is really telling us that Facebook Live is the place where we can engage our families the most right now, so that's the direction we're excited to go with that. We're working on finishing up a community mailer that I hope to be printing at the end of this month. It so far highlights some of the wins we've seen in our district, as well as spotlights on our facilities, the status of our facilities right now, our financial updates, and utilizing some feedback that we've heard from our community polling and parent surveys to inform the creation of that mailer. So very excited to send that out to the community. We're working on recognizing and celebrating our Standards of Excellence staff members. The Standards of Excellence Committee did an excellent job. We've had several staff members recognized for collaboration this month, so we definitely don't want that to pass by and want to make those people feel special so we can recognize what right looks like and continue to put that at the forefront. And then it is the time of the year where we need to do a refresh on COVID-19 messaging, just continuing to keep it at the forefront. We're running into cold and flu season too, so just keeping those reminders out there to keep washing your hands, keep your kids home if they're sick, all that fun stuff. So that work never ends. Any questions?
Questions for Maggie?
All right, thank you.
Nicely done, thank you. All right, next up, Building and Facilities Report, Mr. Mike Ware.
Okay, good evening. All right, to jump in to recap, our goal in up-to-date buildings and facilities is score 3.90 on the My School is Clean question on the student engagement. Again, this is student voice that we're trying to capture throughout K-12 to see what their understanding or perception of their school and how clean and safe it is. So we have some opportunities here. This preliminary data to look at, and really, this is why I love this process, and I mentioned this during our 90-day rollout, is the data was telling us that what we were doing was working. As we started into May 2020, down to October 2020 in fall, and then into May 21, we started doing a major initiative to celebrate wins, highlight what we're doing throughout our district through cleaning, through media efforts, our newsletters, engaging our students, engaging our parents, and multiple different platforms. And again, by spring, we were exceeding our potential goal at a 4.4. So we felt very, very good about this process. And then we get our our fall preliminary data, and you can see right there that we fell just short of our goal. But again, this is why this process is fun, and it allows us to dive into why this happened, what adjustments we need to make, and then how can we keep moving forward. The leaders in this room here all contributed to what we did over the last year, and I thank them for that. And we're going to regroup over the next month, 30 days, to figure out what we can do different. We now have students in our buildings, as opposed to last year, the majority of last year. So that gives us a new opportunity. And then now how can we engage them differently? I know we had cleaning activities through the spring last year with some of our younger kids and even our high school kids. Even we can go into to do building tours or other ways, open forums to engage our students. So that's going to be the effort going forward, and I'm excited for that opportunity. Collecting voice from our community is another opportunity that we want to try to achieve. We started trying to collect a voice from our athletic events. So far, we haven't been able to collect a lot of data and not a lot of participation. So working with other departments on how we can collect the data, get voice from our community on their feelings and their perception of our facilities as we go through, football games, baseball games, our track, and whatnot. So again, another great opportunity. Some wins to celebrate, a couple pieces of data. As I was preparing for this board meeting, I came across and I started looking at some historical data and wanted to celebrate this. And we've been celebrating this data for a while now. But work order completion on the far right, and 2021 and 21-22, you can see we have an increase of 28%, which is a huge, huge win to celebrate. We have some staffing issues in this department, but as you can see in 2021, we had 197 work orders completed to date. At this time to date, we have 254. So again, a great win to celebrate within our facility maintenance, custodial department, and really highlighting all the work that they're doing. At the same point, work order expenditures. At this time last year, 2021, our expenditures for internal work orders, so this is the work orders that we are doing within our district, not outsourcing, was at $53,000, just a little bit over $53,000. 21-22, we're down 46% at $28,000. So a cost savings, being able to redirect resources to teaching and learning and to other important decisions. And we've talked about this a little bit. I just wanted to show the data to the board is that our savings on the portable classroom. We renovated an older portable over the last few months. We estimated that if we had to purchase a renovated or a used portable is about $155,000 and some change. Total cost with including moving the portable unit, power, getting equipment, cost the district about just over $70,000. So it's a 55% savings to the district and a great win to celebrate. Some rounding themes that we've done over the last few weeks. We've done a number of parent roundings. Very positive. This is the themes that we're hearing. Our parents are happy that kids are in school. We started rating those interactions through a 1 to 4 scale. The majority or the average rounding rating is a 3.8 with our parents. We're rounding with our students as they're boarding our buses through different activities or during mealtime. But overall, with the transportation piece of it, happy with the students that are happy about arriving to school on time. An opportunity to look at is Wednesdays are a longer ride, and we know that because it's a shorter day, and we're putting all of our students on the bus. Overall, bus rides are very positive. So again, we're collecting that data not just through the classrooms, through different platforms and different opportunities such as the bus. Other rounding themes through with employees. Our employees felt like our operations department as a whole was prepared and ready to open our doors. Communication has increased. Responsiveness, we talked about, we shared some information on our help desk ticketing system and our responsiveness to needs of our staff and our students. Buildings are clean and ready and safe, and our systems are working. Are they perfect? No, of course not. They're not perfect, but we try to strive for excellence, and we keep tweaking and making adjustments as we go forward. And then finally, some improvement in action that we're seeing. We did poll our high school students right before we did our Studer survey. We did a quick polling, and 99% of our high school students felt, that completed the survey, by the way, that felt that their classroom was clean when they walked into their classroom. And I believe we had 230 or so responses last I checked. So again, overwhelming, very positive and a success to highlight. Our tech department did do a quick pulse survey on the opening of the school year and their ability to provide excellent customer service, resolving tickets in a timely manner, and communication on a scale through 1 to 5. You can see the data here, all over 4s and all over 4.5. So again, a department that has strived to improve over the last 18 months, and you can see the evidence here that what we're doing is working. Next 30 days, as we talked within the pillar committee meeting, our focus is to continue providing return on investment once we make major purchases, to be able to provide to the committee and the board, and then continue collecting data that we can show the wins and show adjustments that we need to make and to make informed decisions. Okay, buildings and facilities updates. River Mill seismic upgrade. We just completed an RFP for the seismic rehabilitation program grant. And we were lucky enough to get 5 successful, very competitive firms to provide a proposal. We formed a selection committee and evaluated those firms through that committee as well through reference checks. We do have a proposal or recommendation later this evening on which firm that the district would like to move forward with. Overall, again, very happy with the response that we received. All firms were very, very highly qualified. We did interview 3 of them, and were able to get a better connection. Our goal behind that was to know that we're going to be working with this firm for 18, maybe 20 months over the course of this time, really making sure that we have a strong connection, a strong partnership through this, and that they have the district's best interest in their mind. And so I'm happy with the results. Director Weinert was a part of the process. Director Walpert was a part of the process, so happy to talk about that a little bit more if there's questions. North Complex. We unfortunately did not get as a successful turnout on proposals for the North Complex access road. So we have turned that RFP down, we have declined it or turned it off, if you will, and reassessing on our next steps. We want to be able to make sure we have a competitive bid process and that we have individuals that are interested in. And we feel like the timing due to the fall and whatnot going into the winter time was just kind of poor timing on our part. So we want to regroup again, working with our leadership team on next steps. So Rivermill Elementary, our portable updates. The renovated portable is ready to go. The second portable arrived this week and is being installed. Power is being trenched tomorrow, and so we're moving quite along through there with those 2 portable units. District office is near the end of completion as well. Power is just the last piece of last task that we need to complete. We got internet cabling running. Furniture is being purchased, so we're very, very close of making that building being able to be occupied. And as mentioned, I'll just review this quickly. We're having a lot of success in the operations communication in our summer or our monthly video updates. We are making a shift to talk about what the need is within our district. We've done a great job talking about the things that our district has been applying to our resources in terms of capital projects, different infrastructure upgrades, but now we want to really highlight the need that's apparent throughout our district and throughout the school. So we're excited for that opportunity. I'm looking forward to this first video being released later this month. Any questions?
I do, Mike.
Yeah.
Back on your pillar report for the rounding themes.
Yeah.
I was aware on our bus route that we were quite a bit late to school in the morning. And so I know that we're just one of many. And more of my concern is for those kiddos that need to eat when they get to school. So do we feel confident that those children have enough time to get to school and have something to eat before they go hop in the classroom?
Yeah, I do feel confident that they have the ability to have food, and they may be bringing that into the classroom. We are working with our transportation department to start really, one of the indicators that we track is the arrival time and pickup time, rather, as well for our transportation fleet. And there are some tweaks that we're trying to make to get some of our students to school on time, but they do have access to those meals in the morning.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I had a related transportation question. I've had a lot of parents approach me about the different start times, particularly I think on Wednesday mornings. I think there was a couple of years ago, we were all on the same schedule. And I'm just curious, was that due to transportation limitations that we made that change, or?
So our Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday are all our alternate stop or pickup times in the morning. Wednesday's a common start and a common release time. We made those changes to accommodate the capacity of our buses, as well as some other factors, but mainly our buses, were very much packed to the limit of how many students we can put on there. Common release, we wanted to make sure that we didn't want to disrupt too much of the schedule, and we needed some additional seat time, I believe, for our high school. So that's why our secondary schools, which is why we went to a common start time on Wednesdays, and the common release is a normal early release.
Correct. Two big whys behind the same time for Wednesdays. The first is actually parent voice. And one of the greatest complaints prior to this year's Wednesday schedule was we were releasing younger kids home before the older kids were coming home, and that created childcare problems for families. So that was our school district's attempt to listen to our families to try to accommodate that specific need. The second thing is a high school instructional time. High schoolers require the most seat hour time. We've really thinned back the amount of days that we're in school this year, and so we needed to capitalize on those Wednesdays to maximize those minutes in the classroom.
Is the bus rides longer on Wednesdays? I guess I'm just trying to,
I would say they
reconcile
are.
with what the parents are
Wednesdays
sharing.
are longer. because we're
Wednesdays are
picking up-
longer
we're
because
packing that
of the
bus.
start
There are more
times.
people on the bus,
That's
and
correct.
so, George may have 4 or 5, the town of George, the city of George, may have more high schoolers than elementary schoolers, and so on Wednesdays, that may require more stops than it would
Right.
when they were just running an elementary route
Okay.
versus a high school
Yeah,
route.
yeah, because the pickup time on Wednesday is like significantly earlier for
Yeah.
my students than the other days.
Yeah.
And so, okay, I was trying to reconcile
Yep.
all of that, okay.
Since we're talking about buses, how are we doing on bus drivers?
That's a good question. We have a couple bus drivers in the queue, and I say in the queue, going through our HR process. And so we're getting closer to the light, if you will. One driver that was out on leave has returned, and so our workforce is getting stronger. We still have a need, and there's the changes that we made in the recruitment efforts is showing some positivity in terms of drawing more attention to our district and wanting to work for us.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Mike?
I have 6.
He's not kidding either.
I was hoping somebody else would ask him. Okay. First one is, when we started talking about bonds in 2016, I think it was, we had put together a phase 1, 2, and 3 plan of priority of projects.
Per tier,
And at some point, we had a lump sum total of $898,000 sticks in my head of dollars that we have spent in district to that point in time, saved by, or not saved, but done it in-house and not put it on a bond.
Okay? Yes,
Do we have an up-to-date version of that?
I could get that. Yes, we can easily get that data for you. Yes.
Perfect. Maybe next meeting?
Easily, yes.
Cool. Next thing, you had mentioned the portable. One thing that we redid, repurposing the Rufus room. And I think that's something that we should tout, as well as not only saving whatever the difference is between 155,000 and 70, but taking a building that was an eyesore for many years, and the youth football kids used it to clean their cleats for many years, and now it's being utilized for something for the greater good. So don't downplay that if you have that conversation with somebody, because I think a lot of people know Rufus and appreciate the things that room did for a lot of kids. Track maintenance. What are we, 2 years into it? A year and a half into it?
Yeah.
What do we have to do ongoing on that, and are we doing that?
We are, there's a minimal track maintenance that we need to do, but it's just maintaining, obviously, the track surface. And really, a lot of our efforts is being proactive on reducing those individuals using bikes and rollerblades and walking on it with cleats. There isn't a lot of maintenance that needs to be required, a general sweeping from there, but we did purchase some new transition maps. We were using, or mats rather, we were using some artificial turf, and that was creating a bit of an issue because it would be laid, or it would lay on that track during the summer, and you can see a bit of a color change now. This mat it's easier to remove. It's not a tripping hazard when we fold it up. But the maintenance of it is we're maintaining it, and we're following the industry standards.
Perfect. We're checking these off pretty quick. The school board got a semi-spicy email from a concerned client, if you will, on the efficacy of the ozone system that we put in the system, or in the schools for the HVAC system. Can you speak to that? Not necessarily the email, but just the efficacy of, like, is it working?
It is working.
Okay.
It is working. There is some information out there. There's a lot of information about ionization. Good and
Ionization,
bad.
not ozone. Thank you.
Good and bad. And I did provide communication feedback to Maggie Kelly to speak to that and provided some data. We're not the only district that did this in Clackamas County. Lake Oswego specifically is one that did ionizations within their classrooms. The data shows that it is working. It is effective. The company that we worked with and that we contracted with to install it used a product that is widely known, that did their own clinical testing to say that this is an effective measure to indoor air quality.
Perfect. We're doing really good. Given the amount of work that has gone on in the district, in my tenure as a school board member, nothing attributed to me being on here, but just in the time frame, seismic upgrade to the junior high. We're doing a seismic upgrade to the River Mill, the back acreage, portables, all this other stuff. And what spurred it, what the question I'll get to eventually was, the new road on the North Complex. Government contracting is a complex thing, and mostly educators, some other people involved in the district, obviously, but none of us are really contract specialists in the government realm. At some point, do you see the district hiring somebody, because as we look at dollar figures, $1.9 million, I don't want to say you could hide the wages of somebody, but you could hide the wages of somebody that specializes in this world and maybe create better contracts, better scopes of work that aren't as clunky, and maybe would lead to a better end game and not having to do the rebid process that we've done on several of these projects.
Yeah, if you were speaking to the RFP for the access road, there was a little clunky, I guess, if that's what you're speaking to.
Yes, but even like on the seismic on the junior high, we had some issues with the engineer, and you know,
Yeah.
maybe somebody that's an expert in that field would recognize that, hey, maybe you're not the right guy, actually.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. To evaluate our process, to when we go out to RFP, to make sure we, have the right people at the table making the decision in the best interest of the district, I think you're absolutely right in that. And with something we can evaluate moving forward as we get to these bigger projects and as we talk about a potential bond for the district.
Yeah, and then that's the thing is, eventually, if we get to a bond, we'll definitely have to have one, but maybe having one in pocket leading up to that.
Yeah, yes.
If there's enough of this outside work going on, it might be something that we explore a little bit more.
Yeah, either that or we could glean some information off of, maybe the state has somebody.
The state does, many districts, when we talk about a bond, they have a bond director or a director of capital improvement projects when they bring on a bond and are specialized in what you're talking about. A lot of it is project management, understanding contracts, understanding the scope of work, and that we're meeting compliance. So the stuff like you mentioned, Director Walper, some things that we can glean from, but at the same time, we know that there's a dedicated resource when we have these larger projects, which is valuable to a district.
Yeah, and the other thing I was thinking too is whoever did the application for the seismic grant, that could be in their wheelhouse, that they're just out hunting for these things, whether it's federal money, state money.
Correct.
Whatever it is, and that's just part of what covers their wage and their livelihood. And maybe you guys have thought about it, so that just came to mind. Last thing was, kind of has to do with the back 40. We obviously are talking of repurposing the gray maintenance shed, which was the maintenance shed. So where are you guys, and how do you feel about your space? I mean, I feel like we got all the stuff going on, and you guys kind of just keep getting shrunk down, and
In
your
terms of
area
our
gets-
maintenance and ground shed, our space is limited. We've been very effective on just trying to utilize what space we have. We have the operations building that has a good amount of space where we can store Connex boxes where we could turn into other storage units. We have a warehouse that we have holding a number of our pieces of our equipment. So I'm not going to say that it's perfect, but it's also something that we're able to adjust and manage right now, given our current status of storage space.
Great. That's it. That was number 6. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mike, appreciate it. And next up, Finance and Accountability Report. Christina Weiner.
Good evening. Thank you, Board. I am happy to announce that we did have our first finance pillar meeting last month. We had a full turnout, and we were able to discuss our goals and kind of do some planning for the future. Do want to talk about, we do have some results. Our goal was to score 3.85 on our employee engagement survey on the question, the superintendent manages district finances appropriately. Last fall, it was a 3.85. We had a small decline in the spring, which is the 3.78. And on the preliminary data, we're looking like we're going to have a 4.03. We're very excited about this. I would like to say this is from me, but this is not. This is from having great leaders throughout Estacada that is cascading the information about the district finances. So we're very happy about that. The next goal that we have is to maintain 0 findings on our annual audit report. The district has, for the last 3 to 4 years, had 0 findings. And preliminary report coming out is for our 2020-21 audit. We will also have 0 findings. So we're very excited about that. We were also talking about our next 30 days, what it would look like, what we're hoping to get for our future meetings. And some of the actions that we were going to do is the YouTube finance video that was published last month. Got some great information out about the audit process, and looking forward to the next one. We're also looking into updating our website, the finance website, making it a little bit more user-friendly, kind of giving some helpful tips and tricks about school business finance. And then another way is finding creative ways to tell our financial stories, whether that's a graph or a different, some more, or different ways to kind of share the district's financial story. So very excited about moving forward with our plan, and I want to thank the directors for attending. And our next meeting is Monday, so see you Monday. And now for the district finances. For the general fund, for the end of September 30th, we did have a month to date. We had 2.2 million revenue come in. And then we had 2.6 million expenditures going out. You can see I did add a column there, so previous month adjustments. So these are numbers that were different from the previous month's board report. And then, so if you add last month's board report plus this month's month to date and the previous month's adjustments, you will get year to date. Does that make sense?
This was upon a request from Director Martinez from the last meeting.
Yes. So you'll see there our previous month's adjustments, the biggest one being we were able to post our beginning fund balance, which I will go in a little bit more. So our fiscal year projections for the year, we're projecting a revenue of 40.7 million, expenditures of 33 million, so that'll leave an ending fund balance of 6.8 million. And this is prior to me bringing the adjustments for the additional staffing, which I will bring next month. So our ending fund balance is looking, it's not finalized, but it's enough for me to post it as about 7.2 million. Any questions? Okay, the next one I'm going to show you is just how we are projecting our revenue, how that is split out by funding source. Our state revenue is 63% of our funding source, which is mostly our state school funding. And then again, I wanted to give you a comparison to last year at this time. So it's the exact same numbers from my first report I showed you. It's just comparing to last year at the same time. And this again was a request from Director Walpert, just kind of comparing budget to actuals. This is as of September 30th. Our instruction expenditures budget, we're at 14.7 of our total budget. And for our support services, we're at 21.5% of our total budget. And then this is, again, the general fund by major object. And it's also a comparison to last year at this time. So you'll see that our revenue is 16.1 million, or almost 16.2 million for the year. Our expenditures is 5.6 for the year. And that leaves us with an activity of 10.5 per year. So we have collected more revenue than as expenditures at this time.
Christina, just one thing, because we're seeing this a little bit differently than we have before, so I
Yes.
just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. One of the reasons why that revenue, total revenue so far is up from 11 to 16 is because we add the beginning fund balance to the revenue.
Correct.
So that's that $7 million beginning fund balance actually shows up as revenue because it's cash that we have. So the actual increase of what we received from the outside hasn't gone up that much. That's rolling in our beginning fund balance into it. So
That is correct. Exactly. Any questions on that? And our next report I'm going to show you, or our next graph I'm going to show you is our expenditures. As of September 30th, you can see that our salaries were 29%, our associated payroll costs were 15%, and our purchase services, which are more our contracted services, are at 44%. So that's at 88% that are fixed costs of our expenditures as of September 30th. And now enrollment. So our enrollment as of September 30th, and I'm going to go ahead and start. So Clackamas River had 401 students. River Mill Elementary had 415 students. Estacada Middle School had 400 students, and Estacada High School had 517 students. So our total enrollment as of September 30th was 1,733. Now I circled the negative 43 as compared to last year, but I want to remind the board that last year we were not dropping kids. We were still trying to gather and recognize those numbers. So the numbers you'll find in future months, November, December, you won't see as big of a difference there because we were able to then start actually recognizing the students. So last year's was an inflated number, if that makes sense.
Last year's based off of the frozen enrollment in
Yes.
2020,
Well,
or was it beginning of the year last year?
so we were counting the students that we knew that were there and the ones that we thought could still come.
An ADM payment and bodies in the seats are two different things too. So we were told to keep our bodies in the seats, so we didn't drop anybody until November, but the ADM, what we get paid off of, was frozen the whole year.
And then you can see our comparison to last month is NA because this is our first month of the year. Any questions about that?
I thought we were looking at much larger numbers for River Mill and for Clackamas River. So was that just estimated before we started the school year and it just didn't come quite where we thought it was? Or was there something that happened there that reduced those numbers?
There were some families who just didn't end up showing up
Okay.
at the end of the day. So they were still in our books and on our enrollments, and then on the 10-day drop, they came off of the books.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I accidentally hit the wrong button. I hit oh, there it is. Took it away, now it's back. And so then here is our graph, and you can see we're starting right in the middle of where we normally are to the 2021-22. I do predict that to go higher, and I do want to mention to the board that next month I am planning on adding the Summit Learning Center's enrollment so that we can also have that as comparison. Any questions?
Not a question, but thank you for adjusting the format.
Yeah.
I've got a question for Ryan. Do we do any follow-up on the individuals that don't show?
A little bit, and so we have a form, and we ask in that form when they unenroll their reasoning for unenrolling. The law states that families are not required to disclose why they're leaving or not. We do occasionally follow up when we know families who are leaving, but there's still a good percentage that are just lost in the wind. If a child enrolls in a charter school, that charter school typically lets us know that they're coming. There's a lot of families who we know have chosen to keep their kids at home and homeschool just because of COVID or masks or vaccinations. That's what we know so far. So we do ask, we capture some of that, but not all of it. Good question.
Any other questions for Christina? All right, thank you very much. Superintendent's report.
Thank you very much, Board of Directors. Excited to have this opportunity to share with all the status of the last 30 days inside the Estacada School District. What I'm most proud of is yesterday, the Estacada School District had its opportunity to transparently roll out its progress towards the 5-year community-made strategic plan. We've made a commitment to our community to uphold the mission, vision, and values of this strategic plan. And yesterday was a win for our school district because we had the opportunity to transparently share how we're doing towards that progress. And I'm very excited to share the results of that to our school board of directors today. I do want to say, though, that I'm very proud, and as you see our district scorecard, which we agreed upon at the beginning of this year, we made goals based on the surveys that most of our pillar leaders have mentioned today. But we also made some different goals in an attempt to keep student success and student achievement at the forefront. So I'm proud to share with the Executive Board of Directors and our community this evening that the Estacada School District is well on track to fulfilling the obligations that we promised our community 5 years ago, well, 3 years ago, but in a 5-year strategic plan, as we try to envision what the Estacada School District will be like in the year 2030, which is just around the corner. That being said, I do want to share with our Executive Board of Directors that in pillar number 1, student success, our goal was for 85%, and I'm talking about last school year, the 21-22 school year. Unfortunately, but at the same time, pretty impressively, through the fire, the pandemic, and the ice storm, and hybrid learning, and in-person learning, and comprehensive distance learning, and then back to in-person learning again, we were able to get 72% of our entire student body to demonstrate proficiency in 100% of the essential learning standards. I challenge other school districts to be able to match this achievement throughout this process. And the win, even though it was a fail forward because we did not meet our goal, the win inside of that is we're starting this year knowing where each and every single kid is in terms of their academic growth with grade level essential learning standards. And so I'm proud of our diligent work, even though we fell just short. But we are making progress and we're closing gaps even as we speak. As the other pillar directors talked about, and I'll just quickly go through the greens, but I'm very proud to see that there was more than, as Chair Rydell pointed out, more than meaningful movement in a lot of different categories, telling us that we are exceeding what we promised our community we would get to in year 5 of the strategic plan. It is important to note in the student engagement survey that this one has piqued our leaders' interest, and we're excited to dig in and ask how we can improve these student engagement scores as we make a commitment to be a students first school district. It is important to note that our goal was a 3.98, and as Chair Rydell talked about, that means that we really scored a 3.88 last year, and so we did fall below the meaningful movement in that category. And so we as a school district have some work to do here, and we admit that, and we're excited to get this back on track. With everything else, our parents, we know we've got work to do, but we're making growth and progress, and we've exceeded our goal in that category. And then with the My School is Clean, as Mike Ware talked about, even though we fell short of our goal was a 3.9, we ended at a 3.87, we still actually made growth from fall to fall. It just fell short of that goal. So we're in the process of making progress, and we're excited to meet that threshold last year. The community and our board of directors can watch this 90-day rollout that we conducted to the community. It is on our YouTube channel. So if you have a couple of hours, I encourage you to dig under the hood and see the great work as well as the challenges and barriers that we're still continuing to work through. There was 70 people who watched that in and out live with us yesterday, and another 30 people who watched it today. So this report has already reached 100 of our community members, and I'm very pleased with that outreach. Here are the 4 things that I took away from this 90-day rollout yesterday. First and foremost, it is so cool to see the growth and maturity of the leadership team inside our school district. When you think about where we started in year 1 in this plan, and as we talked about metrics and measuring numbers, our leaders have come a long way, and that growth and maturity is so fun to watch, and that reflects growth and maturity in our school district as we become more competitive. The second takeaway is that as you watch this, you will see true, authentic alignment. The arrows of the Estacada School District right now are all pointing in the same direction. That's food services to building principal to transportation. It's really quite impressive what we're all trying to do to be that best-in-class school district for our families. The third takeaway is we're actually taking and executing real actions from these surveys. In how many employers do you take a survey and nothing happens? This school district is serious about those surveys, and we're seeing evidence of action and things being executed based on the feedback of our employees, our students, and our parents. And I'm very proud of that, and this is evident in our 90-day rollout. And last but not least, we've become interdependent upon each other. This organization, from school board all the way down to various parts of employment inside our school district, we are leaning on each other to do the work. It's no longer in isolation, and I'm very proud of that as well. So I encourage all of our community to continue to take a look at that. We're trying to be transparent as well as model transparency as we try to hold ourselves accountable to being the school district that our community desires. Ultimately, this has led into, if you can see the graphic there in that scorecard, and as Maggie Kelly mentioned, a back-to-back honor of being a top workplace inside the Estacada School District. This is a tremendous honor because it's our employees who ranked us in that category, and that's fantastic. I'm also excited for our board workshop, which will be coming up in November. So that will be 2 hours prior to the November board meeting, where we have the opportunity to talk about a potential bond investigation, as well as just to dig into and listen to the voices of our community, both people who are connected to the school district and people who are not connected to the school district, so that we can make sure that we're matching the mission and vision of all people inside our 750 square mile district. We also need to prepare for the final 2 years of our strategic plan and what that's going to look like and feel like inside our schools. And then lastly, we also need to talk about the mid-year evaluation of your superintendent. Now that the data is here, we need to review the scorecard and the goals that we've made together and the goals that I've made for you, with an opportunity for us to have that conversation to make sure that your employee is in fact executing the mission and vision and values of the board. This is a great time for a mid-course correction if you need. So excited for that conversation. And it's a conversation that we need to have probably in November, December, as we get through that process. There are 2 challenges that I'd like to make the board aware of this evening. The first and probably the most urgent issue is substitutes. We, as well as many other school districts across the United States of America, are struggling mightily to fill vacancies when teachers are calling in sick or are taking personal days, etc. Right now, this last week, we're averaging roughly 3 unfilled teachers a day. This is a problem for us. It's a problem throughout the state of Oregon. In fact, the governor and the Department of Education has just reduced the requirements for substitution, which is you no longer need a college education. Now, there's some conflict inside of that whole process, but at the end of the day, regardless of your opinion on that, it indicates and highlights the fact that we need people to help in the worst way possible. So because this is a public meeting, it's important for me as your superintendent to reach out to the community to say that we need help, and if there's people who can step up to help, that would be greatly appreciated. It's also important to note that our current teachers, the ones who are showing up, are going above and beyond the call of duty to cover for each other. And I think that goodwill is amazing, and I think that it needs to be recognized. But we also need to know that that's not a sustainable process. And so we as a school district right now are beginning to systems think different ways that we can encourage substitutes to choose Estacada instead of choosing a substitution place at a different school district, because we all compete for the same subs in the same sub pool. And I'd also like to recognize and reward in some way the teachers who are stepping up to cover, because they don't have to do that. They choose to do that. And that's why, again, Estacada is such a great team. But it's also important to note that we want our employees to be rested. We need to encourage them that if they're exhibiting symptoms, to stay home in these circumstances. Teaching in this climate is a very, very tough and taxing job right now. And so if people choose to take their scheduled vacation days, we need to continue to encourage that, because that's only going to make our classrooms better when our teachers stay fresh. And so we as a school district need to find innovative ways to encourage our people to remain fresh, all while covering for them. So I just want to put that on the board's radar, and I'll continue to increase the communication with you as we try to problem solve that. And the last one of your superintendent report, which is more of a hot button community issue and one that we're going to need to begin to prepare for. So starting the first week of November, the CDC is going to begin reviewing the vaccination status and its ability to be safe for ages 5 to 11 years old. Later that same week, a different group, I believe a governmental agency as well, is going to be reviewing that, and we believe that the second week of November, the Pfizer vaccine is going to be emergency authorized for kids ages 5 through 11 to be able to start taking that vaccination. Now, that's going to create a lot of controversy inside the Estacada community, because the question that's going to come next is that going to be mandated? Now, I want to make sure that our community hears this loud and clear, that the Estacada School District does not have the authority and or the decision to make that determination. That's a determination that's going to be decided at the state level. The governor is going to be ultimately making that decision. That being said, that is not a conversation that is happening right now, and we do not expect there to be a mandate while it's still in emergency authorization. It's once it comes off the emergency authorization is when parents need to pay close attention as to what the status of that vaccination is going to be. Now, a lot of parents are going to be anxious about that news and about that decision. And obviously, we, the Estacada School District, will work with each of our families as that decision comes down the line. But it is important to note that employees of the Estacada School District have already been required to be vaccinated. Inside that vaccination mandate was an exemption process where employees got to choose if there was a religious exemption that prevented them from getting the vaccination and or a medical exemption. And I want to let our parents know that even if a mandate were to occur, there would still be exemption processes for families to make choices. And so it's important just to note that the reasoning why the vaccination mandate is in place is to increase the amount of people vaccinated. But at the end of the day, inside the Estacada School District and many other school districts around the state of Oregon, the vaccination rate did not, in fact, increase at all. The people who remained vaccinated were vaccinated. The people who chose the religious exemption and medical exemption went through those portals. So I still do believe at the end of this road, if the vaccination is mandated, families will still have a choice to make if they choose to go through that process or an exemption process. And so I want to start engaging our community in that conversation. I know our board members will be approached with that question as that time gets closer and closer. And the Estacada School District will always stand that it believes that families should be able to make their own choice in this matter. The Estacada School District is here first and foremost to educate any child who walks inside that door, and that's what we're focused on. So as the mandate and the vaccination becomes another part of our conversation, that's a choice families get to make. We're going to stay heavily focused on educating all children who walk in our door. That's your superintendent's report. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ryan. All right, so on to item F, reports and presentations. Mr. Scott Sullivan for the Division 22 report.
While he's coming to the podium, I have a comment or a question.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, taking a phone call. Denise, can you add the superintendent's report to the board book after the fact? Or do you do that currently? Because it's like in board book, it doesn't pull up.
Right,
Does it get added at a later date?
yes.
Okay.
The whole minutes of
just
the
wing it.
board meeting.
We have that. I want to see that in front of me. And then something else will come to me later. I'll bring it up.
Okay.
All right. Division 22.
Good evening. It's that time of year again where the Estacada School District presents to the school board what is known as Division 22. These are the rules and laws and regulations that govern public education in the state of Oregon. We were asked to report to the community and to our school board just to let you know how we are doing in terms of being compliant or non-compliant in the Division 22 rules. This year is going to be a very easy year. I can say right now that we are in compliance with everything that is in last year's Division 22. Today's report is referring to last year. So we are fully in compliance for last school year. We usually are close to being fully in compliance, but last year ODE did make a number of adjustments and waivers, and a lot of those things were set aside because of the COVID issue. The only thing I really want to do at this moment in time is just put a little note out there that we got to think about one of the future issues that we are going to struggle and we continue to struggle with, and that is our PE minutes. Instructional minutes set forth by the ODE and the new laws are at such a level where our elementary schools are having a very difficult time. I asked them to meet that this year, which it's not supposed to be fully met yet, but we tried, and it just was not doable. And so that is going to be an issue that we're going to have to talk about and kind of figure out how to reconcile that for the future years when those numbers are at a full capacity based on the law. Wanted to give you the heads up on that. Yes.
Question on that, if I could, Chair. I know that Clackamas River is doing a running club. Does that count as PE minutes?
Yes.
By the way, that's highly successful in my household.
Are you running?
No,
Director
not for
Wheeler?
me, for the young people.
Technically, that does count. Yep. Our barriers inside the PE minutes is staffing. We need additional PE teachers, but even with additional PE teachers, we don't have enough gym space for kids. We need additional gymnasiums.
So what's the minutes we need to hit? Is it weekly or daily?
It's weekly. Jen will be able to tell me on K5.
You'll have to answer, no, you're answering that. We'll get back to you.
Yeah, we'll get back to you. It's like 150 minutes a week. And there's one other issue that Mr. Carpenter didn't mention, and that is not just facilities. It's also, you have so much time in the day, and if you add more minutes of PE, you have to remove minutes of English language arts, art, something else. So that is a key piece of that.
But that's the law, right? It's going to be the law that we have to meet those minutes?
Yes,
So we'll have to meet those minutes at some
at
point.
this point, yes.
Sorry, I interrupted your presentation. Thank you.
I really don't have anything more to say. There are a couple of new ones out there that you might not have seen before, and I just wanted to highlight that. And one of those is the Ready School Safe Learners Guidance is part of this Division 22. We are in full compliance with that. And another new one that you might have noticed is an Every Student Belongs policy. Our district did pass a policy, adopted a policy back, I believe, in the summer, and that is a new law that we had to add as well. Other than that, it's pretty standard.
What about the media specialist call out here? Wrong supporting document?
No, we, for years, and I think for those who've been here before, have heard me say we're not in compliance, and I thought I might have mentioned this last year, I can't remember, but for the very first time of marking my not in compliance with media services, ODE actually called me and said, let's talk about this. That's never happened, and I've been doing this for 10 or more years. And so we started talking about it. I explained what we do, and they said, oh, you guys are in compliance. You didn't have to mark that. I said, okay, good. So
Because we have our site principals
Yes,
As that? Okay.
help guide that.
That was, if I recall, that was the old, not old, but previously was the librarian position. And that's where, so it hasn't always been the media like you think of it now, but it was
Yeah.
as we transitioned away from having a full-time librarian, that's when we were out of.
A truly certified, went to college to be a
Gotcha.
librarian. Yeah.
That's the kind of genealogy of that position.
Scott, when this is presented outside of this board, I'm assuming that you supply evidence in that column? Because it's fairly blank, so I don't know where that evidence is held.
This is a working copy that I share with you. What I share with them is just that they'll give you the rule, the title, and compliant or not compliant. And if you're not compliant, you provide a plan to become compliant. They don't ask for any evidence. This is what I ask our directors and our principals to go through to make sure that we are in compliance. So we actually take a look at each and every one of these to make sure that we're there, and they take notes on that. And so that is a working copy. ODE will not see that.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm probably gonna not, trying to figure out how big a book is this? Is this a, something government book? Or is it 10 pages?
I wish. I've never seen a hard copy, but on the internet, on their website, it's awfully large. One of these rules could be 2 to 3 pages, typed very small, 8-point font.
So do we have one individual that is dedicated to this to, follow them, or is it you?
I supervise it, but I ask for input from everyone. So if there's a law about graduation, I go to the high school and make sure we communicate and make sure things are on target and everything's okay. If it has something to do with instructional minutes, I manage that. If it has something to do with PE minutes at the elementary, I need to go to those folks to get that. But I supervise it and coordinate it.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, any other questions for Scott? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on with reports and presentations. Very excited to see building principals here tonight. So we'll start off with the elementary principals back to school, Jen and Christine. Christina, sorry, I didn't bring my glasses. Look like an E.
Hello, I am Jennifer Berman, the principal at River Mill Elementary.
And Christina Anderson, principal at Clackamas River. Tonight, we wanted to start with some wins that we've seen in our buildings as we came back to school. Very first big win is our schools are open and all our students and teachers are back in the building. So it's definitely a different feel when you walk into a full building with every student there. We were able to start this year building relationships person to person. Instead of trying to do it through a computer screen, we spent the first few weeks really establishing those trusting relationships, building routines, and teaching our students how to be in buildings while following the regulations that are in place. And then the other big win that I'm going to talk about is how we have achieved so many pieces that are aligned between the two elementary schools. Today, we had another great PLC with both buildings at River Mill, just talking over academics, really focusing back on what we're here for. So teaching our kids how to read, write, do math, and have relationships with each other.
Some other wins that we have starting off this school year is just our standards of excellence has really come alive this year, and it's walking our halls and it's made a way into our classrooms, which is really exciting. We're celebrating that collaboration standard for the month of October, not only with our staff, but also with our students, and we're honoring students that are showing that in different ways. So that's pretty exciting. We are actively working on our low scores, so the things that we saw last year have worked their way into what we did this year. And a win with that is that we have some new social emotional curriculum, our Fly 5, that we're implementing in both our schools, and our new curriculum called 95%, which is helping with the gaps that we have in reading. So those are two big new curriculum pieces that are helping with the data and survey results that we had from this spring so we could hit the ground running in the fall, which was really exciting. We're also using our PDSAs, which is Plan, Do, Study, Act, where we're looking at problems we have and we're pulling in data and we're studying what we do and we respond to that. And so we're seeing that not only as a staff in both of our schools, but we're also seeing it in our classrooms, and it's visible on our walls, and the learning that's happening in students' goals that they're working on are visible as you walk through our classrooms. So that's a really big win for us.
Another win is we have full-time vice principals in both of our buildings now, which is really exciting. It gives them a chance to really focus in on the building, building those relationships with our staff and students, and just being a part of our culture every single day. Our technology response time and support this year has been huge. They're now in our building once a week, which means that if there's a problem, we know exactly where to find them, and they're fixing all of those problems before they leave for the day. So it's really given a face to technology and given us the ability to talk directly with them. And then transportation, getting our kids to and from school, we feel like has been a huge win this year. I still don't know how they do it with all the miles that they cover and all the kids that they're picking up and still showing up at our door on time. It's just a great support for us.
With those wins, we do have some challenges and opportunities that we've already come across just the beginning of this year. The first one, I'm sure all of you have had a piece or have heard about, is just putting our students in quarantine. That hit us really hard right off the bat. We thought we'd have a little more time to get a good system in place, but it didn't wait for that. So we, right off the bat, were putting a lot of kids into quarantine, and we really didn't have a good system set up yet. For one, it was taking our office staff way too long to get our kids identified that needed to be in quarantine and go through the process of communicating that, and then what were they going to do because our teachers were teaching full time. I mean, you can see how there was a lot of pieces that we needed to put in place. So that hit us pretty hard. The great part about that and the systems that we have in place is that we are really quickly able to start collaborating with the people around us, and we made adjustments. And we've been able to hire 2 quarantine teachers to help with our students. We have a K2 quarantine teacher and a 3-5 that works with both students from both schools. And so that's another piece to our alignment that's been really nice, is that they have to work with district PLC teams to figure out what we need to do to bridge the gap for students in quarantine. So that's been really helping us with that alignment piece, but also just allowing more and more students that as they're either quarantined or might have symptoms and need to stay home where they typically wouldn't have in the past, they still have access to the learning online. But it also allows our teachers to keep teaching our students in the classroom full-time, which was really important. So that was a challenge we had that our systems have already quickly adjusted to, but it definitely was stretching our system, and we had to tackle that right away. Another big piece, Scott alluded to it a little bit, but we were trying really hard to hit that 150-minute PE minutes this year so we could be ahead of that hitting Division 22. We came up with some different creative ideas and realized we were tapping our system a little too much. Our teachers were stretched too thin. They weren't getting that collaborative prep time that they were used to getting, and that really does impact their planning time. And so we had to quickly make adjustments again. And we had to take a step back and look at PE minutes differently, which we still haven't completely solved that, but we are definitely putting a good faith effort into getting there in that compliance. But in the meantime, we were able to bring library back, which was another piece that we were missing. And that once we are able to bring library back and just take a step back and look at our PE minutes, it really helped right our system that was being stretched too thin, and now we're kind of at a point where we are humming right along and in a groove that's working really well.
Along with the blessing of having all our kids back was trying to figure out how to get over 400 kids in our buildings with the restrictions we have on spacing, entrances, and a few other things that were taxing our system. It was the first time in over 16 months we'd had that many kids walk through our door. like we did in September. So we've got that up and running now. We just had to do a lot of problem solving with where are kids going to eat, how can we space their desks, what can this look like so our kids are still in the best learning environment where they can work collaboratively with those requirements. Problem solving, we have wonderful staff to help us through that, and we were able to put systems in place. And now when you walk into the school, we hope it feels like it did 16 months ago with kids learning, walking the halls, working together. The other thing that we saw was we did have some issues, again, buses, traffic flow, especially at Clackamas River. We had a lot of trouble with parents having to wait in long lines or basically running head-to-head with buses. So we had to make some adjustments there, change the flow of traffic, and make it so our buses could get in and out of the parking lot. And our parents' drop-off time went from over 20 minutes to under 5.
Then bear with us, we have some thank yous we wanted to give tonight. Our first goes to the board for just approving the funding that we needed to make the adjustments to help our system that was being stretched. That made a really big difference for us. A big thank you to Superintendent Carpenter for just the quick response and supporting us and collaborating on some solutions as we came to you with issues that creeped up right away. We appreciate that support and quick response. And to all the directors that we have that just in their rounding are asking us continually what resources we need. And the second you say it, within days, we're getting some sort of a response back to what we asked or wondered about or questioned. So that's really helpful.
We also wanted to thank our vice principals who have been there with us. These poor guys are getting late text messages from us, asking questions, really digging into what are the problems. Our thinking past 9 o'clock doesn't stop, so a lot of times they're having to respond. I would throw Jen in there also. She's always been a support, which has been wonderful for me. Our secretaries, they are definitely the first voice our community hears. So whether a parent is excited, happy, sad, they get to take that on and then figure out how to help solve those problems. A lot of them fall well out of the range of typical problems right now, and they are definitely there in the front lines for us. And then a big shout out for Sarah in transportation, who is constantly looking for ways and always saying yes to what we need. We've got kids at school because of that.
And our last few ones, one goes to shout out to technology. Their improvement in their response to us has just gone above and beyond where we were a few years ago. And we just can't thank them enough for what they've done for our teachers and our students to be able to do what we need to do. And then our instructional coaches, when we were in a situation with this new quarantine, our instructional coaches dropped whatever they needed to help support teachers, get kids online, and get Canvas up and running the way that we needed to. And last but not least, a big shout out to our community. We know that quarantine's been hard. We know that this adjustment to that many students in our schools and our parking lots and pickup and dismissal, we know that it's been a challenge, but you've been supportive, and we just can't thank you enough for that.
We did have one final shout out to our teachers and our staff in our buildings who are just showing up every day and working beyond the hours and doing above and beyond what we've asked them to do because they care about the kids in this community and they want to make sure that they're learning and growing.
Questions?
Any questions?
I got a question on the two teachers, the K2, 3-5. Can I call them a floater?
Call them our Q school
Q
teachers.
school.
Q school?
Q school.
Quarantine, okay, thank you. Your Q school teachers, how do they integrate into the PLCs, and like, how do you choose if you're second grade this week or kindergarten?
We actually created a schedule for them. So if they're working with K1, 2, which one teacher is assigned to and the other is 3, 4, 5, they go into that PLC at their scheduled time so they know what essential learning standards are going to be taught that week,
Okay.
and they can plan accordingly so that kids have a nice springboard for when they come back.
And then are those kids that are in there exclusively quarantine kids, or is it maybe somebody going to Florida to see grandma? Can they enter those virtual rooms?
So there's two pieces to
And I'm not
that.
going to Florida, I'm just asking.
We're allowing anyone access to that school, whether you're quarantined, sick, at Disneyland, Legoland, hunting, all of those things. We're allowing you access to it. We are only changing attendance, though, for students who have been quarantined. So you only get marked present for attending Q school, we call it, and doing the work if you've been put in quarantine. Because we are not technically an online school, we're a brick and mortar school, and that encourages kids to get back to school.
Are you seeing your quarantine numbers, your official quarantine numbers drop, but the number of students out of building stay the same?
I think they ebb and flow. So we at one point only had 3 students in quarantine, and now we're back up. It just kind of depends on the week.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, thank you very much for the report. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Shout out to you guys, too.
Seriously.
Good job.
And next up is the secondary principals back to school, Ben and Amy. Ben and Amy show.
Hello, board. I'm going to go first. My name's Ben Hargrave, the principal at the middle school. I am, but
Amy Hudson, principal at Estacada High School.
so our total enrollment right now is 398 students. I know that Ms. Weinerd said that it was at 400, but this is today, and we'll actually be up at 399 tomorrow. Students at our school take 6 academic classes daily, and weekly they have 2 intervention or enrichment opportunities and 1 opportunity for a structured social emotional development course. We have 17 and a half licensed teachers, 3 and a half specialists. Each teacher teaches 5 sections. On average, a teacher has 132 students throughout one day in their core classes, or 152 students considering 70 if you add the students in the intervention or enrichment class. Average class size right now is 26.2 students. DADR stands for Data Driven, shorthand. There's a few things that we're doing at the middle school this year to meet our students where they're at and to help them understand where they stand as learners. We're beginning to implement small social groups. Our counseling department, as well as our partnership with a few community resources, are hosting small social groups during a flex time that we have at our school. It's not interrupting core learning time, and that's supporting foundational prerequisite learning skills. We have a host of students coming to our schools with a lot of complex needs, and this is an opportunity for us to respond to those complex needs and provide them with those behavioral interventions that we know are important to access learning. That's new that we're doing this year. It's been a goal of ours to implement at the middle school level for a few years, and we now have an opportunity to do it. I'm really proud of our counseling department.
Can you scoot that microphone over to you a little closer, please? Thanks, Ben.
Thanks. Also, data-driven. We are a school that's aspiring to be an RTI at work school. Just as we are a PLC school, we want to be an RTI at work school, response to intervention. And this year we have adopted 3 different programs, Corrective Reading, Imagine Reading, and iReady. All are based on the idea that we need to provide students with supplemental reading and or intervention reading opportunities to help them to be reading at grade level or above. Same with math. Our math data, our universal screening data shows that our students are struggling to learn grade level math. And we have a tool called iReady to help us meet students where they stand and provide them with the foundational skills to access core grade level math in their classes that they take during the day. Extension is another flex time class that we offer. This is PLC specific. We know that all students learn at different times, and we need to provide a handful of students with different learning opportunities because they might not understand the skill yet. This extension class is an opportunity for our teachers to use data to pull groups of students in to their classes and provide them with an opportunity to re-engage in the content or re-engage in the skills that they're teaching to show evidence that they've acquired that skill. This is also something that we are implementing this year that we hadn't done when we were in comprehensive distance learning or in hybrid. I'm really, really impressed with our counseling department. Our counselor at our school, Miss Amelia Gundlach, has partnered with our high school, and we're utilizing a tool called Oregon CIS Junior to develop career and college readiness. This is a huge, not a huge system, but it's a huge win. It has tremendous impact on what our students' mindsets are as they enter secondary schools, move into high school, and start thinking about their futures. And we have not implemented this at the middle school ever. And so as I think about freshman on track data, as I think about readiness for high school, this tool is going to be very important for us to progress monitor and see if it's helping students as they transition to high school. This has been talked about briefly. Learning is important at my school is an indicator that is highly ranked in our student engagement data. And learning is fun at my school is the lowest rated indicator in our student engagement data. And I have a bunch of questions about that, including why, what, and how. And this year, I am really excited to dig into answering these questions with our students and putting systems in place to meet with students on a more regular and consistent basis to tease out why. Why are we feeling this way? What is the perception? What's happening at the classroom level that's eliciting this response, and how can we overcome these barriers? Big theme for our school this year. And then as I sat down yesterday to put this together, I wanted to be genuine and I wanted to be vulnerable for this group. Wanted to share things that are on my mind. And all of these items that I'm going to share with you now are in regard to achieving our school-wide goals, which are aligned to our district goals and then district strategic plan. There's an idea that I call the 7 core competencies. These are high leverage teaching strategies that elicit student engagement in classrooms. How to roll these core competencies out, how to increase these practices within our classrooms and our teachers is on my mind. Quarantining and isolation is on my mind as we tighten our systems, keep our students safe and keep our students learning, whether they're in school or at home. And also to develop our students' executive functioning skills, especially organization. We are seeing students are not organized, and we need to help our students to be organized and have an approach to school so that they're successful. Discourse, feedback, management, technology capacity, engagement, post-pandemic, in-pandemic, student regulation on my mind, student resilience, staff burnouts, harvesting wins, eliciting feedback, acting on feedback. These are all on my mind as we work towards our school's goals, which are aligned with our district's goals. And all things, all items, all topics, all themes that collectively we're working on together at the middle school. One of the wins that Kelly Hayes had shared was our staff, our employee engagement. And at the middle school, our employee engagement improved a lot. And I believe it's because we are all truly in this together to overcome some of the barriers that we're experiencing right now. at the middle school. That was it from me. Start of the school year. What questions do you guys have?
Do you sleep at night? That's
Yeah.
on your mind.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm only talking here. Joe, you go ahead.
I don't have any questions right now.
I do.
You can,
Oh, I heard.
I've got a
murmur. I thought it
question
was
for
you.
you.
use my 6.
You were mentioning, Ben, you were mentioning that some students are not meeting the proficiency in math, English. Have you done any kind of an analysis as to whether or not the majority or how many of these people, these kids, are actually coming up through our system vis-a-vis moving in from some other area?
Yeah, I have, yes.
And what have you found?
I have found that an overwhelming majority are coming through our system. There are a handful that are coming from out of district, not a lot.
So what do we do to, make that better?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that the answer to that question lies within our principals' alignment with one another in our essential learning standards, K through 12, as they align to our Common Core state standards. I also think a lot of an answer lies somewhere in our outreach to our community and providing our community with resources that they need to engage in school, and how we can partner with community agencies or families more strategically. Those two things are on my mind as we think about if students are coming up to our system and are behind or are struggling, how can we improve that transition from elementary to middle and middle to high?
Yeah, because personally, I think the junior high level is very important.
Yeah.
I was a math guy, and I would have had a tough time in high school had I not had really good teachers
Yeah.
that encouraged me. And that's one thing I want to say to you folks at the elementary. I've never seen such enthusiasm as I saw on the first day when Ryan and I were there. It was unbelievable. It was great. But I'd like to see more attention between the two of you, or the four of you, as to what we can do to bring that level of understanding up. I was hoping you were going to say, well, they're coming from out of district.
Trust me, he was hoping he could answer it that way, too.
Yeah.
And thank you for answering that truthfully.
Yeah.
Hard to do, because you probably knew where I was leading.
No, but we do really great work together, and we
Yes.
have a lot of work to do, especially as we have set very high and appropriate expectations for our students by the year 2030. And opening up the box and looking into the barriers that are in front of us to accomplish our goals, we have the right people here to do that work, and we're doing it every day, and it's really, really
Complex.
inspiring and complex.
And I believe that completely.
Yeah.
Okay, I have one thing.
Yes, go for it.
It's gonna be a couple. First thing,
Shocker.
Ben, I wanted to compliment you on your presentation and then relating everything back to your building level, district level, and then the strategic plan. Because I think that's crucial. I mean, that's why we're all here is, what we decided a few years ago was that the strategic plan is gonna be our guiding thing, and you relating it back is key. The other thing was your data-driven, your last one there is career and college readiness. And you went into and you started talking about getting the kids ready from middle school to the high school and whatever in the future. I think you said after high school or whatever it was. And I just wanted to touch on this, and you too, Ms. Hudson, and I wanted to grab Mr. Sullivan too. But in the outside of the education world, every time you turn around right now, there's shortages. You go to Subway, they're trying to hire people. you go in the building world, I can't get anything because there's nobody to do anything, and I don't believe that. But every time you turn around, well, paint's out because we can't get people to make paint, and we can't get truck drivers to haul it in. And so I think the shift, and I wanted to ask a genuine question, is 5 years ago it was, how are we going to get the kids college ready? Now, is there an overarching shift of how are we just going to make these kids, and it goes back to our vision of being successful and ready for the next level? Are we seeing that in the education world? And I again, just appreciate you not making that emphasis on college. I do appreciate the kids to go to college. I have a college degree, and I feel it's important, but it's not important for everybody.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of opportunity out there for kids to make a good living wage and a lifestyle in a trade or a truck driver position or anything else, so.
Yeah. Have I seen a shift away from college? Yes, I have. It's actually very intentional of us at the middle school to say career and college readiness instead of college and career readiness. It's very intentional of us to start with career first. As I think about your question, and I've only had a couple of seconds to think about it, I also think about like the 4 C's of the 21st century student, and the skills that if you boil down all the skills that we ask our students to be proficient in by the time that they enter our workforce or go to college, there's these 4 C's: critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, and
Phone a friend.
communication. A traditional school system might not elicit those behaviors from students, to be creative, to communicate effectively, to collaborate with peers. Putting our students in a position to do those things early on is going to be really, really important as they think about a career or as they think about post-high school education, whatever that looks like. And that's where some of the dysregulation that we're seeing is coming from, especially after being at home for a year and a half for some of them. We're putting kids in groups again and asking them to collaborate and do work. Woo! You want me to talk with my peers in person? Are you, what does this look like? And to teach those behaviors, it's a struggle some days. And it's important that we continue to do that as well and put our students in those positions. And to be creative as well. Creativity in the 21st century as technology increases in our world and employers are looking for people with technological skills to do something that might not have been traditional in the past. Our students have to be creative and think outside the box and synthesize information. And that's not what a traditional school does, but a 21st century school needs to. And so working towards that model is really important.
When I think it comes to like trade jobs and getting work done, Ms. Hudson might be able to add to it, but recently, Ms. Bresco has been bringing in all sorts of folks, and just my limited time there, I went to do a talk about electricians, but I've been seeing that there's been plumbers, police officers, some colleges coming through, so I think your offerings are diverse, but maybe you can talk about that in your review, but it seems like it was not just piped at college, as far as what they're offering at the high school.
Any more questions for Ben before we pass the microphone?
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ben.
And I'll actually start with answering your question. We were fortunate enough last year to allocate some of our Measure 98 funds to add a position at the high school for college and career coordinator. And so Alice-Ann Bresco has taken that role, and she has owned it and is doing tremendous work with our students and families and community, for that matter, to ensure that our students and families understand how to navigate the college application and financial aid process, and that students have a wide variety of experiences. And she did it during our hybrid instruction last year in comprehensive distance learning, as well as now being able to actually have folks come in and talk to students. But an equal emphasis has been provided for our students to be able to experience trade talks. You know, we've got the military coming in, we have different folks from different trades coming in, and she's doing tremendous work, like I said, but really that is a more balanced focus, and especially with, as we slowly start to build up our CTE programming again and diversify those offerings, making sure that our students do have, you know, they know that there's multiple paths after graduation, but most importantly, that they have a path. So, and that it's okay, college isn't for everyone.
Good to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I don't have all of my like broken down data like Hargrave over here, but just celebrating some of the wins that we've experienced in the first, I will have to admit, it's only one, I guess we're a month and a half in now, but it doesn't quite feel that way. Just the fact that we're in-person instruction, you know, that we've got kids on campus, a nice full campus, which feels really great. I will say a positive was, I think that we experienced last year when we started to bring kids back on campus on a more regular basis, we really have experienced a lot of lag. Students just, I mean, we're still experiencing what Principal Hargrave has said as well, but really kids came in like ready to do school this year, at least their energy levels. Now we've kind of hit the honeymoon period, and now we're working through some other skills building opportunities, but really truly last year we had just felt this like, kind of lag, and this year it just like I mean, if you've been in our building, there's energy, it feels really good, and that really, I think, speaks to just the dedication that the staff, I mean, our staff came in just ready to do this year, really open-minded, and open to change and improvement, and I think that I will say for the high school, at least in my very brief experience there, is a positive way to start the year. We have extra, you guys all spoke to it earlier already, but the extracurricular activities that we're able to provide our students to provide that more well-rounded educational opportunity at the high school. Greece is coming up, well, in a while, but band and choir concerts are, and we loved the cardboard cutouts last year, but it's nice to be able to put real bodies in those seats. You know, we were able to bring back our homecoming parade, and we did a dance, we thought a little bit outside the box there, and did an outdoor dance, and so gave those students that opportunity. Obviously, athletics are up and going, and doing very well for the most part. Our clubs are going, we had Club Fair a week ago, and just being able to bring snow riders back and have our, you know, just all of the different clubs that are available at the high school, and still actually building on that repertoire, like that menu of options for our students, is really great. So that's just been a great win. A couple of things that aren't in here, even just kind of learning from our failures last year, especially in the regards to our student engagement and some of the actions that we tried last year and found that didn't work, and trying to revamp those and being able to elicit a lot of student voice this year. And just, you know, obviously being on campus makes a big difference to be able to have those face-to-face conversations, but that's been huge. Employee engagement at the high school, those results that just came in, we were at a 4.41. That's an increase from last fall. We started that last year at a 3.95. So that's a good growth. And I think that if you take the opportunity to watch our rollout from yesterday, it's all about just the alignment that's occurred across the district, but really feeling that positive impact at the high school with that alignment to the district and our strategic plan. So we entered this year with several focuses, but really trying to narrow down what they look like so that we can do them well. And the readiness indicators that Mr. Sullivan talked about earlier, they were 80, 80, 80. They keep changing a little bit as far as what we call them. But what we did at the high school is we took that great dashboard that Mike and Bryce built, and to be able to use it on a regular basis. So actually my leadership team, which looks different than it ever has, I think, at the high school, it's no longer comprised of department chairs. It's folks that actually applied to be a part of the leadership team based on particular criteria that was put out last year, really all around the vision that we have for our district, and folks that are all in on executing that. And so those folks have actually taken their leadership roles, and they're facilitating student success teams, utilizing that readiness indicator dashboard data, leading grade level teams. So it's based off of our homeroom. So our sophomore homeroom teachers meet biweekly, look at that data, and actually are having conversations about particular students that are being flagged as at risk. And then identifying what interventions they're going to provide, and then obviously doing those interventions and then documenting those outcomes. So that PDSA cycle is happening in various ways at the high school, but really that focus has been through that student success team. And I'm just really proud of the leadership team taking on just a new, maybe uncomfortable role for some of them, and they've really been leaning upon each other to do that work. And that focus is really on our tier 2, and that's gonna lead to where we're aggressively developing in other areas. I mentioned the PDSA cycle, that continuous improvement that's happening in success teams and then also in PLCs. A commitment to having classroom data living on our walls and students having conversation about that data and ownership with their teachers is a focus for the high school this year. And then just coming out of a pandemic, if we're coming out of it, but building relationships and community. So really being intentional, which is hard for educators, you know, like we want to jump right in and start that learning, but really being intentional that the first couple weeks of the school year was really focused on building community, getting to know students, building that teacher-to-student relationship, but also the student-to-student relationship. As Principal Hargrave mentioned, our students are still having like that, they're still developing the skills to be able to just be in social settings again. And so just the traumatic impacts that the pandemic has had for our students. So working through those, but really knowing, trying to be proactive in that way to build those relationships and community in our school. And then a real focus on that instructional discourse that's happening in classrooms. So making sure that students have opportunities to talk through those critical thinking opportunities and build their learning together has been a focus. It will be one of the primary instructional focuses at the high school this year. So I felt like we had just a really great start to the year. And then, like I said, the honeymoon period kind of ended. And so then some things started to bubble up that we realized right away we needed to really aggressively develop. And that's that social, emotional supports. And I've just been really thankful for our community partners that we have. You know, Trillium and Orchid Health have been tremendous. Ant Farm and Todos Suntos have been great as well to work with and really have conversations about what needs are coming up and being able to collaborate on how to be able to quickly start to fill those needs. So that's been something that has quickly came up on our radar, and our counseling department's doing a phenomenal job of supporting students in that way as well. And then looking at our tier 3, so when we think about tier 1 are those students that are on track, doing great. Tier 2 are those kids typically that are struggling in a few areas, but that gap isn't as large. So then really looking at our tier 3 students, and whether that's attendance or behavior or academic achievement, just really starting to create a process that has been lacking, a system to be able to identify those students, provide interventions, and figure out what supports we need to do as a system to be able to support all students at the high school. And then last big aggressive develop is really that communication to students and families regarding grades, evidence of learning and progress. We're still working through developing a system that is really communicates clearly what we want our parents and students to know in a very efficient manner. So working through that, technology department's been great in being able to support that work as well. I only did one slide, I didn't do two. Any questions?
We still have the freshmen on track coaches.
We don't have a freshman on track coach. No, that was something that was through 98, various reasons it's not there. However, we still have our freshman on track core team. So that's you kind of think of like a lab model. There really are they're a group of 5 that are just intensely doing work, still partnered with our Center for High School Success that we've done in the past. It's just a pared down group of folks. But then in addition, we have our 9th grade success team that those freshman homeroom teachers doing that tier 2 work.
Then I'm assuming, parent of high school
Yes.
students, it feels that last year it was very hard on a lot of students, and I believe a lot of credit recovery work is probably occurring this year. Is that one of the reasons why we went to 8 courses?
Yeah, that was definitely, in speaking with a lot of students at the tail end of last year, a large need. There was a lot of anxiety around, I didn't do well this year. And what does that mean for me next year and the year after? And so in trying to figure out, how to address the need of yes, credit recovery, and then also creating a schedule where it provided ample time for best practice instruction, that's where we landed on being able to provide 8 offerings for students, but then also being able to provide that longer class period with that 4x4.
Seems like good creative thinking and problem solving to help.
Yes, we're trying. And I would say as we've been able to talk with students about how how they're feeling about the block schedule, for the most part, about 75% are pretty happy with it. And then the 25 at least have been able to give specific feedback as to why that's not working as well for them. And so we can start to problem solve that as well.
Any other questions?
I have a question, and it's related to quarantine processes.
Yes.
Are we following a district-wide standard process for every building when communicating with parents? And can you give me a little update of what processes are we following currently?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So our process, and I know that it's fairly aligned across the district, when we get notification of a positive COVID case in our school, we immediately start to go through our contact tracking process, which includes looking at seating charts. All teachers are expected to follow a seating chart for students in every period, and that was something we learned very quickly was vital in ensuring our quarantine process was effective. So we look at that. We look at attendance. We do an interview with the positive student as much as possible, and then utilizing the contact tracing if we need to, that the swipe cards that the students utilize. From there, and it's within 3 feet, so student to student, it's within 3 feet for 15 minutes or longer, is what would be considered a close contact. If it's an adult, it's 6 feet. And so then once those students, and it does vary, like if it's an after school, if I get a call at 9 o'clock at night that there's a positive case versus a 9 o'clock in the morning notification, it does vary in that way. So if it's in school, then we try to identify those students as quickly as possible and then actually pull them and have a conversation with them. And then there's it's through Parent Square, an email that Maggie did a great job of giving us a unified message to be able to send to families that lets them know that there is a positive case, that their student's been identified as in close contact, and then it gives the parents the family an option to respond if their student, within that message, it gives them information about quarantine requirements, and if their student is fully vaccinated, has recovered from COVID in the last 90 days, or would need to quarantine. And then there's a lot of in-house things that we do to communicate with staff.
So so I guess the communication that goes, there's not a personal phone call or kind of follow through with parents it's just an email survey, questionnaire respond kind of thing?
Yeah, we struggled with that. So yes, it is just an email correspondence, and the reason for that was to try to be as efficient as possible to get communication out. We would all much rather call and give that information and be able to answer questions in the here and now, but especially when we have multiple cases in a small time frame, that could mean that we're making that could mean that we're having to make 45 phone calls, and we want to make sure that the first student on that list and the 45th student on that list get the information in a timely manner. So in addition, though, I will say the district has authorized, you all have authorized for us to add an additional teacher. And I know at the secondary level, we're in process of doing that. The elementary teachers or elementary principals mentioned that they have those in place. And that person, part of that position will be to call and follow up with families immediately. So if your student were to be on the quarantine list, you would get a follow-up phone call just saying, do you have the technology that you need? Do you have any questions about accessing your Canvas? What questions do you have? What teachers do you need connections with? Those types of things. So that's definitely, I guess, could be added to the aggressively developing and how to close that, kind of tighten that up when students are in quarantine.
And the reason I'm asking all this is because recently I've experienced quarantine for one of my kids, and I just feel that there is a huge disconnect.
Okay.
And there was no follow-up parent contact. It was just that basic survey.
Okay.
And I feel that if that's what we're following, it seems like parents might panic if they don't have a follow-up call, okay, so I'm dropping everything, picking up my kid. Are they gonna, be behind on their studies? Are they gonna take homework? Are they gonna, we're talking about 10 days or 7 days from missing school. So it's that disconnect that I felt myself, and I would imagine that other parents might be feeling the same way. So figuring if there is a gap or a better way of communicating and following through, because I don't know how much quarantine we get on the school average, but, I don't know if the numbers are increasing, decreasing, but at the end of the day, if we're going to be adding additional teachers for additional coaching for those kids, there has to be a better communication so parents feel confident that their kids are going to be taken care of during,
Right. No, I appreciate that feedback. Yeah. It's definitely a process we need to improve upon. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? So I just want to end, thank you to the four of you. Amy, you had said it feels like we're way farther than a month and a half into school. But I know for myself, just being in the community, consistently seeing all four of you out and engaging with families and engaging with students, and it makes a huge difference. So thank you for all of your hard work and all the time and effort and energy that you're putting in, not only from your aspect, but to support your teams that then turn and support the students and the families. It's quite incredible what you guys have been able to pull off here in the first month and a half of school. So thank you. And thank you for being here. This is a long day for all of you as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody.
All right, moving on to item G, discussion. I don't think we have one. We're going to continue to move on to H, hearing of citizens for action items. We have none. Moving on forward to I. The consent agenda includes a package of one or more items to be voted on as a unit. However, if any board member is not in favor of one or more agenda items and prefers to take separate action, a request to the chair anytime prior to the vote will remove that items for a separate vote. I don't even know, do I need to read that all the time?
Yes.
Okay.
Chair Riddell, I move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Okay. Got a motion?
I've got a question before we get too
Yeah.
far into this one. It's just, I might have to pull out of this one.
Okay.
That's why I'm asking it now before a second in a discussion. This item I, where the licensed staff report. This report is action that the district has taken, and we're just, here's a list of it. Are we approving these actions to be taken?
The list, it's a recap of what actions have been taken.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes. Great question. Okay, so we've got a motion.
Second.
We've got a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your right hand.
Motion carries.
So before we go on to item J, as per board policy BBFA, I am going to declare an actual conflict of interest. I will not participate in any discussion, debate, or vote on this item, and will pass it to Vice Chair Shibahara.
Thank you, Chair Riddell. Do I have a motion for item J to approve OSCA memorandum of agreement as presented?
For the record, Chair Rydell, J is good, K is the one you're going to want to
Oh,
pull
is it
yourself
K?
out.
Oh,
Can I
I'm sorry.
practice on Jay?
Of course.
You can absolutely take it.
Yes, yes.
Let's continue.
So Vice Chair Shibahara, I move to approve the OSEA memorandum of agreement as presented.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Yes, I could on this one, so I'll exclude on the previous one. So I'm going to vote on this one because this
Yep,
is not the one I have
You
to.
can vote on
Okay.
this one.
Thank you. Sorry about that, everybody.
I have a question on the duration and the effect. The MOU expires February 20th, 2022, which is coming upon us shortly. And then if it, the rules extend, it goes through the end of the contract year. At that point in time, we either have to do another MOU if everything's extended, or is this contract up at that point? Or not up, but up for negotiation?
No, it's not. So the MOU is in harmony with the current standing contract. So the only thing that expires at those dates is the MOU itself, and everything just reverts back to the original contract. And so the only thing that would require our district to go back to the table for an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, type of a conversation is if the governor were to continue to keep the state in emergency and make emergency authorizations that those laws may contradict some of the language inside the contract. And so that's what requires us to have to go to the table, is when a state mandate is made that is in conflict with current contract language.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay,
All
sorry.
right, so then do I ask for a vote now? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your right hand.
Motion carries.
Okay, now item K, as per board policy, BBFA, declare an actual conflict of interest, will not participate in any discussion, debate, or vote on this item. I'll pass it to Vice Chair Shibahara.
Thank you, Chair
Again.
Riddell. Let's try this again. Do I have a motion for item K to approve the EEA and ESD memorandum of understanding as presented?
I'll second. Oh. So moved to approve the EEA and ESD memorandum of understanding as presented.
And I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion of such item. More chair. This is similar to the last one, but this was just a different group of employees,
Yep,
correct?
that's correct. Focused on working conditions primarily.
So there's no more discussion, then all those in favor, please raise your right hand.
I'll take it back, thank you. Okay, so item L, can I get a motion to authorize the expenditures listed in item L?
Chair Idell, I move to authorize SK School District to spend over $50,000 using the ECF funds and district funds towards the purchase of staff and student devices as presented.
Motion, do we have a second?
A second?
Motion and second, any discussion?
I've got some discussion. So we're approving you to spend over 50, but less than,
Ultimately $400,000.
Okay.
So the reason why is in our approved budget, we allocated this amount of money to, and correct me if 400,000 is too shallow there, but this was our budget allocation for personal devices, but since we're the recipient of that big $400,000 grant, we need to open the ceiling of spending for that.
it's
Grant is
400.
400. and
400K
then
is the
we have a
ceiling on it?
matching.
The ceiling is 392,000.
Thank you.
But just to clarify, we're still not spending more than the 50 of our money that we budgeted.
In fact, I think the grant that we received is actually going to take place of
Take the
that
whole
as
thing.
well.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
The 50,000 that we're requesting is just there are certain line items that are over 50,000, which are 1,000 Chromebooks, and I believe we have, I can't remember the list, but there's, I think, a handful or number of staff devices that bring us over that 50,000 mark, which we need board approval for.
Okay.
And I will add, I will probably bring in my budget resolution to the special revenue fund for this grant. So you will see that added to the special revenue fund for next month.
Because we'll have to move it from that bucket to the
Yep.
general fund bucket so that we can spend it.
So let me see if I understand this correctly. We originally budgeted 50,000. We got a grant or a bond. Now we're saying we're gonna spend 392,000.
So I'll bring it back. So our technology budget had X amount, and I couldn't speak to the exact X amount, but we had budgeted, let's say 100,000.
50,000,
Yeah,
let's say.
100,000. We applied for Emergency Connectivity Fund grant through the FCC and received $392,000. So instead of spending district direct general fund money, we're allowed to use this grant funds. But per our policy, we still need authorization, even though it's a grant, to spend over $50,000. So that's what the request is.
And yet, we're using that money to add more resources and technology, things that we needed that we couldn't because of our budget constraints, because we don't
Yes.
have
Correct,
those funds.
exactly.
That's a
You're
good way.
saying that
And this is money that was given to us to spend towards that.
On those
Specific-
specific.
And is there a certain time frame that we need to spend those funds within?
I don't have the exact, I think it's within a year, but I don't have the exact. We do have a time frame to spend the money. But to your point, yes, this allows us to free up other resources that we've had allocated in our technology budget to support more innovation and more things that we want to address throughout the school district.
Which will probably be coming to you in a few months to improve our school safety communication and some other school safety things. It's an opportunity for us to keep that ball rolling now.
I have a question just on technology in general. I see we have Dells, we have some Chromebooks, Apple, Acer. Is there anything, as far as continuity goes, as technology department working on the same machine,
Yeah.
economy of scale type of?
We've moved from the older Chromebooks. I'm trying to look, see if one of you have them, but I don't believe so. Yeah, the CTI, and we've transitioned to the Dell. Their processors and the components to a Dell seem to be more improved, if you will. And we're able to get those repaired if needed easily or easier. We have a pretty good relationship with Dell. We have a state agreement with Dell. And so we're able to access those devices a lot quicker. So to answer your question, Dell has been our go-to over the last 6 months. These Acers, which are the computers that we've been supplying our workforce, our teachers, have been a great product and has actually tested well with our Zoom room equipment at the secondary level. And so we're moving forward with this same product. So continuity of devices is very important, and that's what we're going with.
Okay. Thank you.
Other discussion or questions on item L? Okay, we've moved, seconded, talked about it. Let's go ahead and vote. All in favor, raise your right hand.
Motion carries.
All right, item M, to approve the proposal from WRK.
Chair Rydell, I move to approve the proposal from WRK Structural and Seismic Engineering Firm for engineering and architectural services as presented.
Moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I'm sure there's discussion, and we'll probably invite Mr. Ware back up to the desk. Questions do we have, or if you want to give just a quick rundown from your perspective?
Yeah, as I mentioned in my report, we completed the RFP process this fall. We had 5 firms. Four firms, thank you. 4 firms submit their proposal, and we interviewed 3. Our selection committee had an evaluation criteria that we went off of, some of it on work experience, references, scope of work. And, you know, after doing the interviews, which was very important, like as I mentioned, to see if we were going to have a good fit with the firm, WRK came across very frank, very honest with us. To be fully transparent, they have concerns about our anticipated timeline, but they also wanted to make sure that, you know, they had our back, that, you know, if that's the timeline we're going with, if that's what the board of directors decide with to go forward, or if we want to extend it, that they're going to be in our side of the court. The other piece that was very helpful to hear is that they were willing and are going to provide project management tasks, as opposed to the other firms where that wasn't going to be as much as part of their scope of work. And where that becomes important is when we're working with GCs and we're working with the seismic rehabilitation grant documents. There are specific tasks and specific paperwork that need to be completed. Obviously going through the procurement process with the GC and working with them on tweaks and adjustments, that's an important piece that is needed. And we spoke a little bit about that expertise, maybe that the district doesn't quite have at the moment. That's a gap that we're trying to fill through this partnership. And again, the committee was a committee of 4 of us. And again, it was an open, transparent. After we did the reference checks of the top 2, both were very, very good references. Spoke to many districts around the state, and WRK just stood out as the top candidate.
Okay. Questions on that?
Not a
what is-
question, but a point of information. WRK is a smaller organization than the other one that was in the top. And I feel, and I think all of us felt that we're in the meeting, that we'll get more attention to detail with those folks than we would from the others.
Gotcha. Great point. And that's part of our scoring, I'm assuming, right, as we go through that process as well. Thank you.
One decision that we may have to come about as this project comes into play, though, is an additional roofing project. And Mike, maybe you can speak a little bit about that, but I know that we're getting closer to the end of life with our River Mill Elementary School roof. And I know we don't want to get into the same places that we were at when it came to the middle school and some of those other things. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't mean to belabor the meeting. This is probably something we do need to talk about, because I think in this project, like half of the roof, if I'm not mistaken,
Correct.
is taken care of here. And so we may need to make a decision if we want to just, on our own dime, get the other half of that roof.
We were awarded $1.9 million for this grant, which doesn't include a full re-roof. Partial re-roof, shear walls, re-nailing, new paneling, obviously, that we've seen similar to the middle school. Our River Mill roof has about 7 years left on its expectancy. So very much an opportunity to look at additional projects while we have the lid open, if you will. And yes, to Mr. Carpenter's point, the roof is near its end of life.
So when would be an appropriate time for you to bring us what numbers would look like on that scope of work?
Very good question. We can ring up some numbers as soon as probably the board workshop. I think I feel pretty confident being able to work with Christina to have that ready for you.
And is the contractor WRK, are they aware that there may be additional work that we want them to do?
Every firm brought that question up, because they're used to that. This is a good opportunity to look at outlets and new systems or HVAC systems and boilers or whatnot. So yes, they're very aware of that. And that was one of the other pieces. Speaking to the references, WRK is very creative and very innovative on how they work with districts, knowing that limited resources are there. And so that stood out to me, knowing that we're going to need to be creative while we go through this process, because we don't have a blank check.
And it also could be a part of a bond conversation too. And so it fits nicely with the workshop. Yeah.
And that's another benefit of us possibly pushing out the timeline, is it can correlate more with the bond if that moves forward.
Any other questions, discussion items?
Just to be clear on the roof, you say about 50% of it's going to be replaced as part of the seismic?
50% is kind of a higher percentage. I think it's a little bit less than 50%. If you kind of are thinking about the top of River Mill, on each side that's flat, the middle portions, there's parts of the middle portions that's the targeted area.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions, discussions on item L? All right. We've moved, we've seconded, we've talked about it. All in favor, raise your right hand. On to item N, hearing of citizens for non-action items.
None.
None. All right, with that, it was a little bit of a longer meeting, but really great information. Great to hear from our building principals as well as our pillar leaders. So thanks everybody for being here, and meeting is adjourned.